an unconstitutional hoax.
Aloha and welcome to Trust and Verify, the only show where the hosts tell you constantly, don't believe a fucking word I say, verify it for yourself. But before we can get to the verification, we gotta actually do the show. That means I gotta introduce my friend, my partner, my co-host, Boogie Bumper. Boogie, how's it going, brother?
Very good, James. Very good. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you. Now, can I hear your best limey, James, by any chance?
Oh, I can only read what I saw in the chat, and it was, Cor Blimey, you all right, Gov?
Cor Blimey. Cor Blimey. What's all this then? What's going on here then, eh? Eh? What's all this then, eh, Gov? Absolutely fantastic stuff from over in the UK. We're going to cover that for the majority of the show tonight, but I do want to keep it local to you, James, which isn't very local at all, that being in Washington, D.C., which is practically on the other side of the world from Hawaii, but putting that to one side. I do want to open it up with what's happening in the United States of America. But before I do, can I just give a little tip of the hat to people who have joined on D-Live? Give yourselves a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely fantastic. I'm still amazed with how people have embraced coming over to D-Live, James, because I thought there's going to be no chance. Like, what's going to happen eventually is we'll just be kicked off YouTube and kicked off Periscope, and that'll be it. I'll retire. And I'll just put out my little podcasts, and nobody will ever see them. Nobody will ever listen to them. Thank you for the diamond, Sleep Lady. I'm watching the D-Live chat. James is watching every other chat. So
you got the minerals, Gov. I see that.
Oh, I see you got rid of the... Oh, no. I was going to say, I see you got rid of the Restream bot, but there it is again. So you don't know how to... We should do this live on air. This is very professional. So you don't know how to monitor the chat without sending the D-Live bot around?
Well, it's my easiest way to consolidate all the chat into one place for me. And so that's the way I've been doing it. So I could try to get, I've got... You know how often our chats screw up? Even yours has screwed up before, where all of a sudden you've got no chat. So I like having where, okay, if it screws up over here, I can go over here, or I can look down here, and I can find the chat so I can try to keep up. But I was saying, I mean, like, and I know it sounds a little bit, ridiculous, but like 500 people watch these shows every freaking episode live. So, even my daily scope driving around the city. So it's like trying to keep up with 500 people talking shit to you is difficult. You know that. You do it all the time. So it's like, having it more central is easier to try to keep up with all the chat. So
yeah. Well, thank you for the diamonds. Adboa chucking in a couple of diamonds there. Very good. Somebody asking on D-Live, is there a way to reply on D-Live? Yes, you just put @ and then start writing their name. If you're on desktop, the name will auto-complete and you can just click it. Or if you're on the app, you have to actually type their name out after the @ but that's how you do it. You just put the @ symbol first. So thank you, everyone, for joining up on D-Live. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you. I don't know. I might go here full-time at some point in the future. Yeah, fix that fucking light up. Be a professional. God damn it.
Got it. Sorry. Someone said, James looking all shimmery, and I went, what? And I looked up, and I was like, oh, shit, I forgot to turn a light on.
People saying, I don't have any clue what to do on here. You'll pick it up. Any new platform is going to take some time to get used to. Like, the first time I downloaded Periscope, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't know how it worked. And, after a couple of weeks, I got used to it. I got the hang of it. And then I ended up on it. So you'll figure it out at some point. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Just that Beverly said, is this D-Live I'm on now? And I'm like, no, Beverly, you're still on Periscope. Our show is simulcast. We are live right now on YouTube. We are live on Periscope. We are live on D-Live. We're just saying...
And Twitch.
And Twitch, sorry. We're just promoting more D Live because it seems to be those people are treating us very nicely. Every time we've had a problem, they've emailed back immediately. Every time we've tried to sign up for things, we've gotten, relatively quick responses. We've been able to, thanks to all the viewers that have subbed to us, we've been able to get to the affiliate stage already on D Live in a relatively fast manner. We don't even know what it takes to go to the verified partner stage. We'll get to that as soon as we get approved on the affiliate stage, and then we'll be able to make custom stickers for you guys. Boogie will make some blackface boogies for you. I'll make some Hawaiian shirt guys or something we'll do cool stuff just for you guys over there. And it's just fun. You guys can post GIFs. You guys can post hot links. You guys can literally, if you want to promote something, you can put the hot link right there in the chat. It's a lot of fun. You can throw produce at us or Ninja Guineas or Ninja Jets. Boogie's got a bunch of cool stuff already added. I don't. I'm older than Boogie, so it takes me longer to do tech. So I'm a little technologically challenged. So I have to go do that after the show tonight. I'm going to try to build up the sound effects and the video effects. Maybe we'll do some really cool stuff. So if you guys can have really cool vid stuff when you're throwing stuff at us. So it's pretty cool. D Live's a lot of fun. We recommend you go over there because we are going to get kicked off of YouTube. I promise you. We'll talk about that tonight and right now, as a matter of fact, just for a second. Boogie and I, and together, we will be kicked off YouTube. There's just a question of time because their new terms of service completely basically say Tav Show shouldn't exist, Boogie shouldn't exist, and James definitely shouldn't exist. So we're just making sure that we're aware and we're ready to always be on as many platforms as we possibly can be on.
That's it. And on D Live, the extra added bonus is if you want to tip, give a tip to the show, you can call it grifting if you like. That's fine. I'll never say no to money. You know why? Because I'm not a moron. So if you want to tip the show, we actually get it on D Live. We actually receive the tip, unlike Periscope and unlike other platforms. If you tip the show, you'll actually be putting something in the coffee fund for both I and James, and that's very much appreciated. I don't know about James. I'd love to do this full time at some point. So if you could just invite 10,000 of your friends to come and join you, then I'm sure we'll be fine.
That's all it takes, guys. We just need you to go get us 10,000 subs and Boogie and I'll be doing this full time.
Absolutely. Think of what we've often said, right? Just today, for example, I woke up about 25 minutes before we went live, and I'll probably go back to bed after the show for about 2 hours and then go to work all night. James will go to work. We both, work full time. We've often said with no money, with no budget and no time, imagine if we were able to do this full time, what we could achieve when we compare it to people who are spending millions upon millions upon millions of dollars lying to your face in the corporate media. You know what I mean? Right. Imagine how much better we could be, but we're a long way away from that. Thank you for the diamond over on D-Live.
Absolutely, and listen, this is how awesome we think we could do something. I just want you to think about this. Like I just said, 500 people watch this show every single day, right? All whatever show I'm on, you guys are so freaking amazing and awesome. About 500 of you watch live every fucking day. You know how many people watched Anderson Cooper when he did $1 million production? Literally, they used $1 million to compete against us on YouTube, and they were getting 10 people, 100 people. So I think their best show ever was something I read it. It was 180 people live. $1 million went into producing that show. So that's how awesome you guys are. People aren't buying that bullshit, but the truth is, we all got to make livings, right? So I can't do this full time, but I would if I could. So get us 10,000 subs, and we're there.
We'll be there, no problem. Competing with fucking Anderson Cooper of all people, believe it or not. So let's open it up, James. I want to talk about the United States of America before we get to the UK, because the parallels here are stark in many respects, from the UK to the United States and then back again. But first, let's talk about the thing that everybody wishes, everybody I think is in agreement, James, Everybody's in agreement. Just like in the UK, how everybody knew that it was going to be a hung parliament before the election. Remember that? Remember they were saying that?
I do.
Remember the polls, James, in the UK saying, well, there's a very good chance Jeremy Corbyn. Actually, it'd be like this. Well, our latest analysis of the polls indicates that Jeremy Corbyn is in a commanding position before the voting this Thursday. You know, it seems his message of, I don't know what the fuck to do about Brexit and let's do something about climate change appears to be resonating with voters. It's very popular policies. But we'll get to Jeremy Corbyn. But just like in the UK, in the United States, I think we can all agree, impeachment is a very successful ploy by the Democrats. It's going really well, isn't it, James?
Oh, yeah. It's going
really well. All the experts agree that this is working tremendously well for the Democrats in the United States. Let's have a look at Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler, or as I like to call them, the A-team. The A-team, because they're a pack of assholes.
Does that stand for Abbott and Costello? Is that the A-team, Abbott and Costello?
Yeah, basically. They were on ABC with George Stephanopoulos, the network that doesn't like to tell you about Jeffrey Epstein, even when they have the evidence, because they're committed to the truth on the ABC. So let's have a look what they had to say for themselves.
This morning, we begin with the two Democrats leading impeachment in the House, Intelligence Chair Adam Schiff and the Chair of the Judiciary Committee, Jerry Nadler. Gentlemen, welcome. And Chairman Nadler.
What a couple of hot shots here, huh? Have a look at that. Look at this. Brimming with energy, James. High energy impeachments all around.
Adam Schiff and the Chair of the Judiciary Committee, Jerry.
Sorry?
I'm not trying to be like as mean, but it is fucking hilarious if you look at that picture right there. That's definitely Abbott and Costello in their age. And then if you look at the sallowness of Jerry Nadler's face, he looks like he's already in the coffin. He looks like the mortician's done his makeup. Like he's done.
They both look like they have serious vitamin D deficiencies. You know?
Sure.
Nadler. Gentlemen, welcome. And Chairman Nadler, let me begin with you this morning.
Chairman
you first became chair of the Judiciary Committee. You set a pretty high bar for impeachment. Here's what you told me back in March.
Here we go.
Before you impeach somebody, you have to persuade the American public that it ought to happen.
What happened to that?
Yeah.
What happened to that policy? Hey? That's out the window.
Let me interrupt real quick because I just noticed that she's here. Elaine, happy birthday from both Boogie and I. Happy birthday. I almost screwed it up last night, but you can go back and you can see that I stopped the end of the show just to say happy birthday to you because I did forget to say it before I pushed play on the exit show. So look, I just disrupted the entire TAV show just to say happy birthday to you.
There you go. And just incidentally, if you are on DLive, people wondering how to share the show out, look in the top right-hand corner of the broadcast screen and you'll see a little arrow. Click that and you can just click the link for Facebook, Twitter, whatever your social media platform, and it'll share the link out. Thank you for joining us on DLive.
You have to persuade enough of the opposition party voters or the Trump voters that you're not just trying to steal.
It's a very high bar.
So far we are up to 0. 0 people have been convinced. It's going really well for Jerry.
Yeah, it is a very high bar. You're not just trying to steal to reverse the results of the last election.
But the times they are changing.
Republican voters overwhelmingly oppose impeachment right now. Haven't you failed your own test?
Well, I don't think so. The polling shows that about 70% of the American people approve of this. But
What? What?
Now, pardon me, got to clear some of those cobwebs out. He's referring to the same sort of arbitrary made-up statistic that a lot of these Democrats refer to. And it's based on a poll that came out a few months ago, which we actually talked about here on this show. But we went into the details, James, and broke it down. What they're doing is adding together the people who want the impeachment investigation to continue and the people who want Donald Trump impeached and saying that this is the amount of people that want Donald Trump impeached collectively. So in reality, what's happening is around 25 to 30% of people want Donald Trump impeached. Now, that is nowhere near good enough to make it a successful push at an election, especially in the House, James. I mean, if you're talking about one side beating the other side by 25 points in an election, that is an electoral wipeout, okay? Like that's a severe damaging result. So
that'll end a party. The party's over at that point. Like literally that will end a party in any country on the planet if you got that big your ass kicked. Like we're going to get to later on Brexit. This is party ending numbers, let me tell you. These guys are insane.
Yep. So they're taking the 25-30% who want impeachment and the 30% who want to see the investigation continue and saying, well, 70% of people want Donald Trump impeached. But we also know that we played clips on MSNBC of people who said, yes, I want the impeachment investigation to continue because it's hurting the Democrats. Like they were literally playing these clips.
Yeah.
So it's like, good luck, Jerry. Let's carry on.
More importantly,
they say that something was wrong. They don't approve impeachment, though.
But more importantly, this is a continuing threat to the integrity of our elections now.
Some might argue, James, that this investigation is a threat to the integrity of the election.
Actually, I'll do you better. I'll do you better than that. The Horowitz report said that this is a threat. Because why? It said it was all complete lies, and these guys are literally the Horowitz report documented that it's the Democrats that are towing the Russian line. Literally, they have made Vladimir Putin, remember, I said this yesterday, you were like, no, it's not Putin, it's me. So Boogie is the Russian behind all of this now. He's the most powerful man in the world. He has now affected the election in America and England. He gets to install whoever he wants in all foreign countries. So Putin is the most powerful man. That's what the Democrats are saying. That's literally
fantastic, isn't it?
Interfering. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, he's the most powerful man in world politics, but he can't get his athletes to the Olympics. I don't know if you saw that story come out a couple of days ago because of the doping, the sports doping. So he can't get runners at the Olympic Games, but he can install world leaders in the two of the most powerful countries on earth. He's doing well.
Thank you very much for the Ninja Genie. Holy whoa.
Thank you very much over there.
We were talking before the show.
N56W111.
We're gonna get like some special video effects for the Ninja Genie and the Ninja Jet. We were thinking, you know what? Maybe we'll get some F-15s to fly across the screen or some cars to go racing through. We'll do something cool. I'll let you know when we get it done. Thank you, though.
This is not a one-off. Impeachment is not a punishment for past behavior.
Now that line's key. Impeachment is not a punishment for bad behavior. James, what have all of the Democrats used as their rationale for impeachment? They say that we're impeaching him because of a pattern of previous behavior. Right. A pattern of previous behavior is why we need to impeach him.
President sought foreign interference in the 2016 election.
James, the impeachment is not about past behavior. The president sought interference in the 2016 election. I'm no genius. I'm no genius. That's obvious. Isn't 2016 in the past, James?
I think so. Actually, it's only in the past if you're Republican. If you're a Democrat, you're still reliving it like Groundhog Day every single day.
That's true. Very good.
He is openly seeking foreign interference in the 2020 election. He poses a continuing...
There was no push. No pressure. There was no pressure. No push.
...threat to our national security and to the integrity of our elections, to our democratic system itself. We cannot...
These are just lines. These are just lines. They don't actually say anything. They just repeating the same lines.
Admit that to continue.
That's Chairman Nadler's position, Chairman Schiff. But apparently right now you haven't persuaded a majority of Republicans that it's worthy of impeachment. And back in March, you also warned against that. You said the only thing worse than putting the country through the trauma of impeachment is putting the country through the trauma of a failed impeachment.
Nostra Schiff over here. Nostra Schiff.
If President Trump is overwhelmingly acquitted in the Senate, is that a failure?
No, it isn't a failure. At least it's not a failure in the sense of our constitutional duty in the House.
Duty.
And I'll tell you what changed my mind, George, because you're right. I resisted going down this road towards impeachment.
What? I really didn't want to do this. You know me, George. I was a big Mr. No impeachment guy. I was very much against the impeachment of Donald Trump. I never wanted to do this, but a patriotic sense of duty was compelling me to talk about impeachment constantly for the last 3 years, James. That's what's happening here. I didn't really want to do this. You made me do this, Donald. You forced this upon me.
But it was two things. It was the discovery of the most egregious conduct today.
Most egregious.
It was one thing where the president invited foreign interference as a candidate when he couldn't use the power of his office to make it so. It was another when, as president of the United States, he withheld hundreds of millions of dollars to coerce an ally, betray our national security, and try to cheat in the next election. That was not something we could turn away from. There was one more fact, George, that I think made it inexorable. And that is the fact that it was the day after Bob Mueller testified, the day after Donald Trump felt that he was beyond accountability for his first misconduct, that he was back on the phone, this time with President Zelensky, trying to get that country to help him cheat in the next election. That told me this president believes he's above the law and accountable to no one.
So wait, it was the day after the Mueller testimony? Now, if I'm Adam Schiff's handler at this point, I would be saying don't mention the Mueller testimony because this is why you said he should be impeached in the first place, because of the Mueller report, right? But that turned out to be fatuous. That turned out to be a dead end. So it was, it was the day after I watched Robert Mueller sitting there not convincing anyone in testimony. Well, is that part of my purview? I'm not sure. What page is this? What page are we on? Can you tell me what page we're looking? I believe I'll let the report speak for itself. No, it's not in my purview. After that blathering, dribbling performance by Robert Mueller, where he convinced no one and even convinced Democrats like, holy shit, what the hell are we doing here? What the hell is going on? It was the day after that Adam Schiff decided, you know what, we really need to impeach him over the Ukraine thing. Isn't that funny how the universe just lines up sometimes?
See, he's counting on the reporters letting him feed that. You know, we talk about programming all the time. How when you say something and you put it out there and as long as you lie enough and you just stick to the lie, eventually it'll become the truth. That's what he's trying to do there by just inserting like a little bit of hint that, Mueller proved he did his first dirty thing and then moving on. The Horowitz report irrefutably refuted actual positions in the Mueller report with evidence. This is just the little tiny narrow FISA report that only covers the FBI and the DOJ's actions, that only covers what's going on. And they relied on testimony that James Comey said in front of Congress that is proven today a lie. They lied to the FISA court. So the warrant that started all of that stuff already proves fruit of the poisonous tree. The Horowitz report showed that they fabricated evidence that the Mueller report relied upon. So bringing up Mueller is a bigger misstep than anything, but he is relying on just using it as a shade technique, not as an actual stand up and say, okay, here it is.
Absolutely. I want to move on from this because quite frankly, it's depressing. I want to show you a great report that that came out the other day. Now, do you think Donald Trump is an anti-Semite? No, you think he hates the Jews, James? What's interesting to me is that he is accused of hating the Jews by the left, and he's also accused of people on the right for loving the Jews far too much. So it's like where the hell do we find this? Well, I have the answer. I have the solution this week from Salon, James. Is Donald Trump a supporter of Israel? Sure, he's also an anti-Semite. Yes. He's everything. He's everything to everyone. He's a Jew-loving Jew hater. That's what we like about Donald Trump. On Wednesday, I have to read a little bit. On Wednesday, Jared Kushner, who is both a White House senior advisor and President Trump's son-in-law, published an op-ed article in the New York Times defending the president's recent executive order, supposedly meant to combat anti-Semitism. The controversial measure will establish Title VI of the Civil Rights prohibition against discrimination based on race, color, or national origin, covers discrimination against Jews, and defines anti-Semitism using the language of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. Notably, the wording is vague and could easily be construed over a wide range of opinions that are merely critical of Israel. One example of anti-Semitism in this rubric is the targeting of the state of Israel conceived as Jewish collectively. Another is denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination by claiming that the existence of a state of Israel is a racist endeavor. That's anti. See, I have serious problems with this executive order, but that's not really the argument that I'm making here. I made that on my show. As I read Kushner's editorial, I was reminded of my interview last year with Charlotte Pence, the daughter of Vice President Mike Pence, an outspoken Christian conservative who is also staunchly pro-Israel. During that conversation, I asked Pence whether she believed that Jews who refuse to convert to Christianity when the Messiah returns are going to hell. They're really hitting the current day issues here. A relatively common belief among evangelical Christians. She refused to directly answer the question, a reaction that said more than any number of words could have done. Your reaction says more than real words ever could. The incident came to mind because it demonstrated how, at least for some people on the right, it is possible to hold anti-Semitic views while still being pro-Israel. Yes, James.
These people are fucking.
This is brain dead.
Lunatics. Listen, I actually do want to talk about what your position was a little bit from your show, because I heard it and I think that I think there's definitely some merit to what you're saying, but I have a completely different take on this, and it basically aligns with the article right here. Is that I wanna take a step back in history of America to understand the actual thing that Donald Trump is trying to accomplish here. Okay, most people will all agree. Adam, fuck, I can't even talk anymore. Most people will agree that Abe Lincoln emancipated the slaves, right? We had the slaves emancipated. After that, it was, okay, now what do? Now they're free, now what? Right? So they put them to work in America. They were giving them jobs, but they were treating them like second-class citizens. They were definitely abused. They literally had one college, Morehouse College, they could go to even try to get education. There was a lot of things wrong, obviously, and it lasted for quite a long time. And they created the Civil Rights Act, right? This Title VI was because what was happening in our country, people were restricting black people from moving forward in society by doing exactly what they're doing to the Jewish people right now. I mean, it's expressly parallel. If you can have BDS teaching classes in your colleges, teaching the students' body to basically be anti-Semitic, to basically be, just compare this, be anti-black, to support things like that. That's what
I'm sorry. Hang on. I'm sorry. Are you arguing against my point by saying that the Jews are in a similar position to what the blacks were at the end of slavery?
No, kind of.
Come on, man.
I'm not arguing against your point. I'm not arguing against your point. That's the thing here. Is I'm not arguing against the you
had my eye twitching there for a second.
No, I'm not arguing.
The Jews are an oppressed minority? Give me a break.
They are
Jesus
when you
Christ.
when you allow it on college campus. They are not because of the college students. The students still have their free speech. The students still can do whatever the fuck they want. It's the teachers. It's in the classrooms. It's what's going on at the professor level. It's what's going on with the classes that are offered. It's the colleges themselves. It's exactly parallel to Planned Parenthood, right? If you want to accept federal dollars, you can't then turn around and donate it to political campaigns. You can't then turn around and murder babies in the name of people that, basically you're taking government money. That's the conservative argument against the government funding Planned Parenthood. It's the same thing here.
Sure.
If the government's going to fund those universities and those colleges, they can't then turn around and be doing things that are anti-American, or anti-Constitution, anti-anything. So they're not trying to restrict somebody's free speech. They're saying you can't do it at the university level. not the students, the teachers, the faculty, what's going on in the classrooms. And that's what I'm comparing it to, is that it's the same, it's very parallel to what they had to go through back still in the 60s and and even up through into the 70s. It's very comparable. Sure. But the free speech aspect of this is definitely concerning. But, you got professors teaching classes receiving government funding denying the Holocaust ever happened. Okay.
Sure. Which is their right.
No, it's not their right to teach that in a classroom if they're receiving government money when it's false history. It is okay for them to go out and speak and do speeches and be guest symposiums. You can do that. That's a different subject. That's like saying, if Boogie wants to rent the community college hall to give a speech, cool. But you can't have a professor teaching a class that says this shit doesn't exist. It's like reversing history. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I disagree.
I know.
Well, no. So I would be far more concerned that funding for universities was based on teaching just what the government wants students to hear, for a start.
That's true.
And the detail is the devil's in the detail here. So we could argue overreach. So if you just wanted to say, all right, no government funding based on X, that might be okay. But then what is X? Well, X is defined as anybody not only questioning the Holocaust, James. If you accuse a Jewish person of either real or imagined crimes as either an individual or a group, that is now anti-Semitism. If you, raise any kind of concerns about how Israel conducts its foreign policy, for example, that's now anti-Semitic. If you don't agree with the policy of Zionism, which is effectively Jewish ethno-state, right? That's what it is. Like have a state just for the Jewish people, that's now anti-Semitism. So you could understand why a lot of people who don't believe in ethno-states, and I'm not even one of them, right. I think every people has a right to their own self-determination. If the people of X country want to live in an ethno-state, then God bless them, go for it. Go and live in an ethno-state if that's what your people want. In the West, we've decided over the last 50 or 60 years that's what we don't want, so that's what we don't have, right? So, but if you question that as a philosophical concept in the future, you'll be regarded as an anti-Semite. Now, I don't want to see people excluded from programs at university simply because they have a different view of history or a different philosophical opinion about what Israel is or what it could be or how it started, things like that. That to me is a scandal. That's a disgrace. Because that's I thought we were against. And, you want to talk about boycotting. Boycotting is a right in a free market. If you don't have a right to boycott, you don't have a free market. You've got a controlled economy then.
I understand your point very well, I think. And that the reason I disagree with what the premise is again, I'm not saying free. Look, you guys all know me. Free speech, fuck it all, PC culture must die. That's me. I'm 100% for free speech, but I know that there are limits to that free speech based on, the other person's rights. Okay. My rights end where your rights begin. So there's that crossover area. As a corporation type of setting, all right, let's put it like this. When you go into court, you have free speech still, right? But you're in front of the judge. So if you tell the judge to go fuck himself, you're allowed to do that, right? Don't you think you're going to go to jail for contempt of court after he says, hey, you can't cuss like that in here? And then you say, go fuck yourself to the judge. That's free speech is limited, right? There is clearly a limit to free speech. This is not the place for you to be able to just say whatever the fuck you want in a court of law. The same is true at the universities for the faculty end. Now, questioning things, having let's say a chapter that you're saying you have the right to question things. Philosophical discussions. You don't have the right as a university to offer a class on history and teach completely the opposite of what the understood history is. You can question things.
Actually, you do though, because university professors have been teaching. They've been teaching how great communism is for the last 50 years. They've been teaching about white privilege for the last 50 years. They've been teaching a whole bunch of stuff. that
You're
isn't
correct.
based in historical fact. So they do have a right, objectively.
Objectively, and that's why the government now, under Donald Trump, is trying to put a stop to the bullshit like that. Exactly like that. Of saying, now they can question, they can talk, they can teach about communism, as long as they're teaching about capitalism and communism, and they're giving the students the ability to think about all things. That's the whole point of university, is to learn from other people's mistakes, right? But you can't have an entire class dedicated from government funding. I'm not talking about private universities. Think about that. I'm talking about just government funding, right? It's the we the people. That means that people that disagree and people agree, their money's in that pool. So it's just like anything else. The government should not be funding a program that teaches that the Jews are bad and the Holocaust never happened. It's a denial of history. We have the camps. We have video footage. We have pictures. We know we have our own people from every country that visited those things and said, you know what? This fucking shit happened. Look, here's the fucking train. Here's the fucking pictures of them getting on the train. Here's the pictures of them getting off the train. Here's the fucking concentration camp. Here's the fucking starved to death people that were released by different armies. You can't
Should a professor be allowed to teach a class on the Afghan war that says that all of the pretenses for the war were fair because that's the official government line? Should a professor at university be allowed to teach that should a professor at university be allowed to teach that the JFK assassination was not the official line?
Not exclusively, but yes. See, that's where I'm saying it again. Again, I don't have a problem with them having a class that teaches both sides of every argument. That's free speech and that's teaching critical thinking for the student. I have a problem when the government is funding a one-sided class against history, against historical facts that can be documented and shown. But the further you get out from history, the more people forget. For example, Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th. You know how few Twitter responses that were like, remember Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day. If you look in history, you can see that the farther away you get from history, humans as a whole, we forget things that we should not forget, so that we don't forget to learn from those mistakes. When you start hiding history on purpose, the government should not be funding that. That's what I'm saying.
But isn't that what's happening here? So you've got somebody teaching a different view of a historical event. You're saying you absolutely must not utter these words on a university campus, which is apparently a place of open learning.
See, I think that's taking the argument too far. I think that that's not what he said. You can utter the words all you want. You can talk about it all you want.
That's the effect of the executive order, though.
No, it's not. The effect is that the government is not going to fund the university to support things like, BDS, to support, teaching a class that denies the Holocaust existed. That's what they're saying. That's not saying that they can't talk about both sides of an argument in the class that's dedicated to history. That's not saying they can't have symposium speakers, lectures, guest speakers, the students themselves. It's not saying those people can't talk about it. That would be a really free speech restrictive thing. But to say that you can't have a class dedicated to the opposite of history, I think that's pretty correct. You just don't take the government money then. Because again, this only affects the government funded institutions. Don't take the money. That's all you got to do. I don't think the government should be funding Planned Parenthood, but the left sure does. So this is again, half the country disagrees on this subject. Okay,
yeah,
so
that's fine. Look, I agree in principle with not funding education, but we should move on because I don't think we're going to settle it. But I agree in principle with funding. Well, and to be fair, I don't want to go full fucking.
I don't think it should be solved.
Either.
I don't think it should be solved either, though. I think that that's the whole point of a show like that you and I do, Trust and Verify, right? Is that the people got to think for themselves. It's okay that you and I disagree on this point. And I think it's better because, again, as long as you and I and everybody in this chat room can debate this issue, you're going to each be better at debating the next lefty that comes at you. And that's the whole point.
I might be a little less skeptical if it wasn't just targeting one particular group of people over one particular thing. And that's what you brought up, we can bring up all the other examples of people, you know what? And I have an issue with saying outright coming out and saying something is false history. You know, because if it is so false, if it is so obviously bad, then it would be very easy for the students to discount what the teacher is telling them. And that would be a great indicator anyway. But
You're right, except for you have to rely on them searching. And now we go to the evil that's behind this. And you and I both know, and we both agree on this, that Google, platforms like that are pulling history off of the internet. So now it's harder for you to even find those images, those videos, those historical points of view, because they're deliberately...
To be fair, Google's on Trump's side here. Because if you have a YouTube channel where you question historical events around the Holocaust, you'll be kicked off. If you have a Twitter account where you question historical events, you'll be kicked off. Google and the big corporations, James, are like giving Donald Trump a round of applause on this one. Yeah! Kick off those anti-Semites. Damn right.
I don't think.
And then he doesn't get any credit for it anyway, because they still come out and say he hates Jews anyway. So it's fucking point of it.
Right.
So I'd be less skeptical if it wasn't just focused on this one thing.
But
if you want to say, let's take all of the funding out of universities, absolutely, hallelujah. I'll pat you on the back. But if you want to say, oh, well, this is because we're trying to address misinformation on college campuses, I'll say bullshit, because all of the other misinformation is going on unfettered, untouched into the future. Nothing's getting done about it.
I understand what your point is there. Again, on this particular thing, I think that's kind of overstating the argument just a slight bit, just a minor bit. And it's that, and that, you know, it's not, let me finish making the point I was making, is that, you know, Google and those guys hide stuff all the time, but more importantly, it's in the books, in the educational books, the textbooks. They're literally rewriting history of the American Revolution. They're rewriting, or not even covering it at all in many cases. They're ripping from the pages of historical history textbooks these types of things. So if you let it go another 10 years, where all of the consensus of the history professors is that Jews are bad, the Holocaust didn't happen, and all the textbooks behind it change history, and then you add into the internet that changes history all the time, at one point in 10 years, the only people going to remember history is going to be you and me in our fucking walkers, and the kids are going to come up to us and say, Granddad, you know, why do you think that this happened? They're going to think we're just fucking senile old birds and ignore us. And then the entire world is going to forget that this history happened. And it's all because we allowed governments to continue to fund professors to teach false history. I don't say they shouldn't argue it. I don't say you shouldn't have open minds to think about things and argue points like JFK, like even the Holocaust, because there's a lot of shit in our textbooks about the Holocaust that aren't true, but they're not totally encompassing the fact that those things didn't happen. We have documentation that these things happened. But when you say, like, again, history's always written by the winner, there's still the loser's version of what happened that's most often forgotten, right? History's always written by the winner. So when we assign why did this happen, we could be completely wrong with the whys. But we have to talk about it. What's the documentation that proves that why? And that's why you should be free to question it. But you should not be free to take government money to teach false history. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're not allowed. That's fine. And so any teacher who would question it, who has documentation which provides an angle for them to question certain historical events, is now banned from doing so under threat of losing their job, which is great. America, land of the free.
You think that's
home
true?
of the brave?
You think that's what was in there?
Well, that's where the funding comes from. So, look, I agree that universities shouldn't be funded by the government, full stop. So we can agree to that, at very least. But that's not going anywhere anytime soon. And I'm sorry, but I've got to put my hand up. No, don't agree. I saw someone in the chat to do the obvious thing. Boogie, do you hate the Jews?
That's not at all. See, this is why we have these discussions.
Well, hang on. I'll answer that. more so than hating any particular group of people, the group of people I hate the most are those who are unable to, discern the difference between loving freedom and hating people because I love freedom. That's right. So, that's kind of where I stand. I don't hate anyone as much as I hate the people who say that other people should not be allowed to talk about any topic their little heart desires. And if that person who wants to speak has hatred in their heart and just wants to say things that offends people and wants to question things that official government documentation says you must not question, then I am far more likely to throw my lot behind that person than the person trying to throw a cold blanket and smother them out of existence. That's just the way I am.
And just for the record, I agree with your final statement there. I do. And you guys all know that about me. I love freedom way more than most people do. And to me, there's only that stop lines where it comes into things like, university, government funding, Planned Parenthood, courtrooms. I mean, there's so many different aspects to that in America, which is different from a lot of places around the world. It really is. A lot of places around the world, all higher education is government funded. That there's no such thing as almost any private institution. So, that's where some of these things where we see things differently come in. I think the government has gone way over the top with all that kind of shit.
Absolutely. All right. Speaking of free speech, James, let's head over to the United Kingdom. You shared with this with me earlier. Sorry, guys, if you did want to continue on with Jew hate, there are surprisingly a lot of platforms here on DLive, a lot of channels here on DLive, which will be more than happy to tend to your particular proclivities. So please feel free to explore. It's a tremendous platform. Pardon me. You shared this with me just before the show, James. Jonathan Pye, who is a rabid lefty in the United Kingdom, talking about the aftermath of the UK election. Let's head over to the old dart, James. Cor Blimey. Let's break down. Let's discuss what actually took place over there in the UK.
Country awakes to a new electoral map. The Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats, both bloody and bruised and, more importantly, rudderless without their respective leaders, will be asking themselves some pretty difficult questions. What a depressingly predictable election. And yet, everyone's jaw is on the floor. How could we possibly have lost? Everyone I know voted the same way I did. If that is the case, then you probably need to get out more, because I don't know if you've seen the electoral map today, but the undeniable truth is no one, apart from me, you, and your Facebook friends, voted Labour this election. And Lily Allen. But
Lily
how
Allen.
Can that be?
Don't forget the political beacon of our time, Lily Allen, James.
Everyone I know spent election day same as me, posting amusing pro-Labour memes on Instagram.
I've got to say, I was watching the coverage on Sky News. It was like a rolling comedy special. It really was next level stuff. At one point, you had one of the experts on the panel, James, get on the panel and say, bear in mind, the Labor Party has just lost by over 150 fucking seats. It's fresh, it's raw. And this guy's got the audacity to get on Sky News and say, Labor should have won this election. All of the things pointed to Labor winning the election. And I thought, this is just next level. So there's a theme here. It's the refusal to accept reality. That's why we opened up with this guy, because he's a guy who actually is accepting reality on the left, which is getting further and further away from what most people are doing.
Instagram, and spent the preceding 6 weeks calling anyone who voted Leave or was thinking of voting Tory thick as shit. How could we possibly have lost? Once again, the strategy of calling anyone who was thinking of voting differently to me self-serving, inward-looking, stupid, racist, leave-voting scum paid absolute dividends, didn't it? This is what happens when you spend the best part of 4 years insulting and dismissing 52% of the electorate by writing articles in The Guardian suggesting that anyone that voted Leave was condoning the murder of Joe and kidding ourselves that surely no one really wants to leave the EU, do they? When are we gonna get it into our thick skulls that the country voted to leave the European Union? Twice now, and this time more emphatically than before. And by not accepting Brexit and denying the harsh reality that, shit as it may be, we have to leave the EU. Why? Because that's the way the country fucking voted. By denying that uncomfortable truth, we have done something potentially far more damaging to our country than Brexit could ever do. We have handed the keys of number 10, the reins of Brexit, and a huge mandate to Boris fucking Johnson.
There you go. See, even if you don't like Boris Johnson, you can still accept the reality of what's taking place on the ground over there. And does that remind anybody of anything, you know, in the last, say, 4 years of elections around the world, James? Can you think of any parallels that are occurring here?
Yes.
Any
absolutely.
whatsoever.
Oh.
It's interesting. We're going to get into it later on. But first, I have to show you this guy. This guy's my favorite. Now, this guy, I forget his name. What's his name? Something Davey. He's from the Lib Dems, okay? Now, the Lib Dems are supposed to be the center ground, like the middle guys. They are the biggest third party in the United Kingdom, if you don't count the SNP, which is really just a Scottish party. So the biggest third party in England is the Lib Dems. Now, a couple of elections ago, they actually were so powerful that they formed a coalition with the Conservative Party when David Cameron was in charge. They had so many seats. They're now down to 11. 11 seats, James. So they've been basically, essentially, objectively wiped out. They have no purpose there whatsoever. They have no power whatsoever. This guy from the Lib Dems, you're going to love this. He's being asked, like, what went wrong, basically. So what went wrong? How do you fix it? How do you diagnose such a terrible election cycle for your party?
Before we play this, for our American audience, the Liberal Democrat Party's leader lost her election. So
that's right, Joe Swinson.
Joe Swinson lost her election, just like Jeremy Corbyn. So they're both out. Both of these parties, you got...
Oh, no, Corbyn won. In Islington North, yeah.
That's right. Corbyn won his seat, but he resigned because this is the second election he's lost as the leader of Labour, and they lost so many seats that they barely broke 200 now, and they're at, like, what is it, 202 or 204, something very small compared to Conservative Tory, which now has, like, 368, something like that. It's odd.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, but she was actually voted out in her local election. So it's essentially the same as, say, imagine Bernie Sanders being primaried out of his Senate seat while he's running for president. Right. Somebody else coming and taking his job. So let's see how this guy diagnoses the problem on the ground. You know, just incidentally, a lot of those Labor seats that switched to the Conservative Party, James, have been Labor for 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. In one case, it's never been anything but Labor. Yep. And it is a direct parallel to the blue wall, which we have spoken about so many times on this show. The fact that long-time Democrat voters actually voted for Donald Trump, right? The same dynamic applied in Brexit. Long-time Labor voters actually voted for Brexit. They wanted to leave the European Union. And when you're talking about long-time Labor voters in this area, you're talking about what? Blue-collar guys, manufacturing, mining, fishing, right? Farmers, these kinds of people, James.
Yep. Did you get the man on the street? I know you and I were both watching Sky News at the same time watching this because you're right. It was a freaking comedy special. It was like watching CNN after Donald Trump won. It was freaking hilarious. But there was a man on the street interview that morning after the election in the very district you're talking about where the seat has always been Labor. It's never not been Labor. The guy was set to become what was called the Father of the House, which means he was the longest serving member of Parliament. Okay? That's what this guy was ready to be the next longest guy ever. They voted him out.
He'd held his seat for 49 years.
Yeah. Since 1970. Since the seat was created, he's never not been in that seat. And they voted him out. And so they did a man on the street interview in his district. And they said, what the Sky News reporter was like, what the hell happened? Like, why'd you guys do this? And the guy literally said, we punished them. They didn't do what we voted them to do. We told them Brexit. They didn't do it. We punished him. And then the guy says, but he was well loved in this district. You guys love him. He goes, yeah, guy's a great guy. He's been a great MP. We punished him. He didn't listen to we the people. We got rid of his ass. These guys, the guy that voted against him said he still loves the guy. He still would support the guy if the guy would have done what he fucking sent him there to do, which was Brexit. And literally told and the Sky News was like, what? Like, that's what's going on.
They couldn't believe
it. Too.
They couldn't believe it. They're in the bubble. They're in the media bubble, James, where nothing outside the media bubble is valid or legitimate or worthy of conversation. They live in a different world. They live in a different plane of existence. So let's have a look at this guy. You're going to love this guy. He's my favourite out of the whole election saga.
Well, as acting leader, I want to work out what went wrong.
And what do you think did go wrong?
Let us look at this in detail.
Okay, let's look at it in detail, James. We're very concerned about the details. I want the truth. Let's have an accurate, truthful, self-analytical view of what went wrong at the election for the Lib Dems.
I was at the board meeting yesterday in Liberal Democrat HQ where we have set up a general election review.
Oh.
We'll look at all the details.
All of the details.
No stone will be left unturned.
No stone.
Clearly, we must have made mistakes, or we wouldn't have had.
Clearly, we must have made mistakes.
Hold on, come on. This is the perfect. We should rewind this because remember, you guys have all watched Boogie do this. I don't know what, 1,000 times. This is the political non-answer answer where, we're going to get a hold of all of the stakeholders. We're going to sit down. Right. We're going to have breakfast. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to figure out. We're going to dig deep, even if it's painful. I mean, Boogie should have written this guy's words. Just listen to what this guy said, and you will have heard it 1,000 times from Boogie. This is the biggest non-answer answer you'll ever hear.
Not the same.
Well, as acting leader, I want to work out what went wrong.
And what do you think did go wrong?
Let us look at this in detail. I was at the board meeting yesterday in Liberal Democrat HQ where we have set up a general election review. We'll look at all the details. No stone will be left unturned. Clearly, we must have made mistakes, or we wouldn't have had the result that we did. But all I'm saying is, judging from what I've already heard from members and from candidates and from party activists, the Conservative Party beat us in many seats that we were expecting to win because they played on the fear of Jeremy Corbyn. That's just a fact.
He's blaming, James. He's blaming a Conservative Party fear campaign on Jeremy Corbyn for his party's poor showing. Now, you might say, well, there is some validity there because they did put out some pamphlets about Jeremy Corbyn will be PM if you vote for the Liberal Dems, but you have to listen to the follow-up point. The follow-up point is what seals it, and it's what gives the guy a big stamp of delusional when you hear the follow-up point. Check this out.
That'll be fed into the review. We'll also have to own up to the mistakes that we made. I'm not denying that whatsoever.
So what are they? Because it does feel a little bit like, you're blaming Jeremy Corbyn. You say you wouldn't have done anything differently on Brexit than Joe Swinson. So what were the mistakes? You can't.
Now, you have to understand the Lib Dems' position on Brexit was we need to resist Brexit. There must not be a Brexit. Okay, so that's the first thing that they're not talking about.
Just blame external factors.
No, but you're asking for me to rush to early judgment, and I'm saying I'm not going to.
Sir, you've just had a whole bunch of seats that have been Labor for 50, 60, 70 years specifically vote Conservative because of the Brexit issue, because the Labor representatives were not willing to back Brexit. And she's saying, well, you say that you defend the Brexit position. Well, let's not rush to judgment. I don't want to rush to any judgment. The one judgment I will rush to is it was a Conservative fear campaign.
You must have a sense after you've been out door knocking, you've been out.
You've been
you
out.
Must have a sense of what.
Well, let me give you one example, which I think
here we go. Listen to this.
Will be picked up in the review. I expect. I think we didn't get the other messages over about what Liberal Democrats stand for, and we didn't get beyond the stop Brexit position. So, for example, we've got a very strong position on climate change.
Yes. Do not adjust your monitors, ladies and gentlemen. Do not adjust your speakers. The guy who is the acting leader of the Lib Dems is blaming, in part, the poor showing for the Liberal Democrats in the election for saying they didn't get their message out about their strong plan for action on climate change. Remember, he thinks that climate change action is so popular, the only reason that people wouldn't vote for his party is because they didn't know that he was in support of it. Can you fucking believe this madness? Do you remember the footage of train goers in London, James, in deep red London? Deep red over there, by the way, is the Labor Party. Blue is the Conservatives. So in deep Labor heartland in London, you had deep Labor heartland voters literally dragging climate protesters off the train. Get him the fuck out of here. What are you doing? What's the fucking wrong with you, mate? Fuck these people off. I'm fucking sick of them. And then you've got this guy in the television studio going, well, you know, I think our campaign would have been far more successful had we have talked about climate change more. The problem was the only message that we really got out there is how much we hate Brexit, which is obviously a very popular message. You know, everybody agrees with that.
It was crystal clear. Except for the whole country. If you paid attention to anything at all in England, any politics at all, this was a single issue election from the start, from before it was an election, because in Parliament, Jeremy Corbyn was talking shit to Boris Johnson, and Boris Johnson essentially said, hey, fuck you, Jeremy, give me an election. I'll prove to you that England wants Brexit. Hey, fuck you, Jeremy, give me an election. Right. I'll prove to you England wants Brexit. This is a single issue that they started before the fucking election. They finally got the election, and England voted over motherfucking whelming for Brexit. And this guy thinks it's about climate change.
Climate change. How about this one, James? Jeremy Corbyn insists his policies were genuinely popular. He's just been wiped out in an electoral landslide. Jeremy, how do you explain the results of the election? Well, I think our policy platform was very popular. You've just been fucking wiped out. These people are unhinged.
He defied expectations. But there's no rest for this Prime Minister, determined to turn a shock result into the new status quo. Boris Johnson knows that his victory rally in the seat of one of Labour's most successful...
Just on you're going to hear a lot of stuff like this, shock result, shock result, shock result. It was only shocking if you weren't paying attention, basically. Now, there was a Conservative MP on Sky News during the coverage, and he said, he was being asked, well, this is a shock result, is it not? And he said, look, if you were out there knocking on doors and actually talking to people, we expected this result. He said, if you only followed the media and Twitter, you would be shocked by this result. And when he said that, they cut the interview off. They cut the interview. They are a meme of themselves, the corporate press at this point.
Successful leaders must be more than a fluke. He wants a piece of Tony Blair's appeal. To hold these seats, he has a plan. To act fast, back up his promises with cold, hard cash, and win the trust of northern voters with infrastructure spending and NHS money written into law. But if there's pressure on Boris Johnson, there's a heavier burden on Jeremy Corbyn. The party is now soul-searching.
Soul-searching.
After a period of mourning, we need to be able to have a chance to stop and think.
Stop and think.
And the old guard are crumbling away. Both John McDonnell and Mr Corbyn will be gone in months. But what comes next?
There's a whole range of youngsters that have come through who, actually, I call them youngsters, but actually they're really well experienced. They're the new generation coming through. Rebecca Long-Bailey, Angela Rayner, Richard Bergen, this whole group of them.
The good news for Labour stalwarts in the UK, James, don't worry, there's a whole bunch of a younger generation coming through. You know what the younger generation believes in, James? Socialism. It's only going to get better for the UK. It's only going to get better for the Labor Party in the UK. Not only have all of the woke policies that Jeremy Corbyn ran on in an effort to placate the far left in the UK fallen so far flat on their face that they can't even admit what happened. Not only did that happen, don't worry, we're also going to replace all of the older guys who cared about like the blue collar votes and the mining votes and in the industrial areas. We're going to get rid of them and replace them with hardcore socialists. Yeah.
This is look, I did the breakdown almost immediately with UK Neil on one of his scopes, and listen, people need to understand how these things work from a macro level. Forget about the micro and start thinking macro. They're going to experience in England now exactly what we're experiencing in the USA. A complete fundamental tide change, because Boris Johnson is going to give the voters that voted for him what they want. Okay? And that's what the president is doing here. He's giving the voters what we want. We want the wall. We want a better economy. We want to get out from under all of these socialist Democrat policies and get back to freedom. That's about to be what happens in England. I want you guys to understand something. The way a parliamentary system works is when the parliament loses confidence in its leader, they can replace the leader. What is not going to happen here is a change now for 5 years. You're not going to get this change to happen because they dominated so good, so much that they don't need a vote from anybody. They don't need it from any other party other than their own. That's a sea change, which means that as long as he maintains the support of the people, he can do anything he wants now in England. The same as is here. That's why that 95% Republican support for Donald Trump matters so much. That's why we're able to change the course of the United States. And now England's going to go through the same, because he's going to go in, be bold and brash, give them Brexit, shove it down the frickin' establishment's throat. And again, like you just heard, Boogie just covered it. He's going to make sure NHS is funded correctly. He's going to make sure that the people get the policies that they want. Those Labor voters that purely punished their party are going to have 5 years of success to realize, holy shit, we've been listening to the wrong motherfuckers forever. And now look at where we're at. Now look at where successful England is. And
on top of that, James, sorry to interrupt, but they're going to have that. But then at the same time, they're going to have a Labor Party that pushes further left, that goes further away from them as well.
Right.
Because that's what happens to these socialist types. If socialism doesn't appeal to people, they turn around and say, the problem was we didn't do enough socialism. Like if we just did more socialism, they'd love us, right?
Yep. I agree with you 100%. Sorry,
go ahead.
I just was agreeing with you. I said I agree with you 100%.
Cool.
You can see a coalition for...
Are you sure you don't want to argue about the Jews again?
I think the future...
It's too nice in here.
That this country needs.
And many have written in the Sunday newspapers today explaining what went wrong. The leader himself has also written an article...
I take my share of responsibility for this defeat. Not all of it, though. Not all of it.
Accepting responsibility, while still claiming his policies and the direction he took the party in was right.
How can you accept the responsibility for the defeat, but then still claim that you're in the right?
Mm.
How the hell does that work, James? Let's do another one here. It gets better.
Now, it could hardly have been a worse night for Labour, as one by one, that so-called red wall of rock-solid heartlands crumbled into dust.
Oh, the parallels here are just stark. And I'm glad because it's finally now I have like tangible electoral evidence to point to, because for so long I was saying Brexit is the same as the Trump election in 2016. Long-time Democrat voters supported Donald Trump in areas like industrial areas, mining areas, blue-collar union-type voters, James, supported Donald Trump because the left-wing option, the Democrat Party, has moved away from their core constituency. They have moved away from the middle class. They have moved away from the working class. They have moved away from the industrial areas, instead to embrace, the hard left academic fringe, which is really what they're doing now. And they think that this is the way forward. The same thing applies in the UK. The exact same dynamic applies in the UK. And you heard him there. The red wall has crumbled.
And now, after the worst result for the party in living memory, and in this radically different political landscape, the political recriminations have already begun. In a moment, we'll be live from Wakefield, where Labour's Mary Craig lost her seat. But first, here's Jane Death.
Don Valley in South Yorkshire, and the Conservatives removed another brick in Labour's supposed red wall. A former mining community turning to the Tories, leaving Caroline Flint, MP for 2 decades, tearful and angry.
20 years she represented this mining community. 20 years, James.
Saying Jeremy Corbyn hadn't spoken to working class voters.
What is the point of the Labour Party if we don't respect and represent those voices? People we have not listened to or respected enough. What?
It's becoming self-aware, James.
Tonight for Labour, I just want to have a bit of time.
I just want a little me
Is it time
time.
for Jeremy Corbyn to step down now?
Yes. Caroline Flint had warned Brexit voting areas might not stay loyal to Labour.
Time and time again on the doorstep, people said, I like you, I'm a Labour through and through. My dad was a miner, my granddad was a miner, he'd be turning in his grave if I...
See, this is the problem, and this should be the scary part for UK Labour voters, James. Can you see the subtext, the dynamic that's happening here? Like, so who are they? Who are the people that are getting removed? It's arguably the good ones, right? It's arguably the people who are saying, no, we need to do Brexit. You need to listen to these blue collar workers. You're not listening to us. The ones that keep their job are the hard left. The ones that keep, because they're getting voted in regardless, because they're in areas where they can't possibly lose, right? So eventually what's happening here, this slow death of centre left-wing politics in places like Australia, in the UK, in the US of A, James, they are kicking out the moderates, right? They're replacing the moderates because the voters are backlashing against the hard left elements of their own party.
That's why we just pointed out, look at impeachment. Everybody on the stage was from California or New York. Everybody. I think Nadler's from Jersey, but that's might as well be New York. But even Jersey is turning a lot more red than blue.
A whole bunch of New Yorkers just threw something at the screen, James, when you said that.
Yeah, fuck them. They're all lefties anyways. I don't give a shit. That's the point, though, is exactly what you said. But I do want to point out something that's probably not going to be pointed out, is that it's not all roses yet for the UK, because it's the UK, United Kingdom. And one of the things that's MAGA-centric, that's exactly what you just saw about Brexit. Look, England wants Brexit. But what did happen also was SNP took over Scotland. And what that is the Scottish Nationalist Party, right? Those are people that want Scotland first. Just like we want American first. They want England first. These guys want Scotland first. So there's going to be some tension there, and hopefully it doesn't go so bad as back in the IRA days. But we'll see if that Boris can lead the economy well enough that SNP realizes that Brexit's the right thing anyways and backs away, because what the real issue, the tension between SNP is going to be is they want to have a referendum on Scotland leaving the United Kingdom as part of the Union. And there's no way, there's not a chance in hell the Tories are going to give it to them. So it's going to be a point of tension that's going to happen. So, but it is nationalistic in its origins. The people want their country to be free to choose their own destiny, and that's what you're seeing.
It's a left-wing nationalist party. But they only want independence from England, and they want to rejoin the EU after Brexit.
Correct.
So, yeah, I mean, please.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't vote Labour, but I just can't vote Labour whilst that man is your leader. But alongside that as well was Brexit and the concern about the Labour Party standing in the way of getting Brexit through.
How about that?
Simple issue.
I'm going to pat myself on the back here for a moment. I remember when Boris Johnson it was even before Boris Johnson won the leadership to the Tory party, James. My opinion was if the Tories want to survive the next election, they have to elect a guy like Boris Johnson, even if they don't like him. Like, they have to make him the leader. Because Theresa May dragged the Brexit decision on far too long. She turned it into a running joke. The opposition parties were very content to have Brexit as like a political football, right? They were very happy for that to happen because the longer it dragged out, the more ineffective the Conservative Party became. So if they had have installed a leader like Theresa May, like Jeremy Corbyn, who was like, well, you know, we should take it easy, we should have another referendum, we shouldn't push too hard, they would have been wiped out. They would have lost. But because they elected a guy like Boris Johnson who was like, no, I'm going to get Brexit done. We're just going to do it. We're just going to, put our saddlebags on and strap up and we're going to just get it done, bloody hell. Cor Blimey. That's exactly what they needed because now all of those disaffected Labor voters are like, look, I just want it over. I just want to get it over with. We voted for Brexit. You're not listening to us. We're voting for the other guy.
This was one of 59 seats lost by Labour.
59 seats.
We're campaigning on an end to austerity and the party's traditional...
Go ahead.
They lost 59 seats. I mean, this is an astounding number. It's just, listen, this is why I laughed earlier when they said he wants to be Tony Blair popularity. Why? Tony Blair never had a fucking majority like this. He's arguably well surpassed Tony Blair already. Is that they've not had a majority government like this, I think anywhere in the world, by the way, not just England, since 1935. This is an astounding thing that happened. It's beyond comprehension in an American political system to understand. Like, this is like Ronald Reagan did the same thing that he did in 84 and also achieved those same results in the Congress and in the Senate. Like, it's a complete electoral wipeout of every branch of government in England. It's astounding numbers. 59 seats lost.
Yeah, somebody in the chat mentioned Boogie played the IRA guy threatening violence. That's right. In the lead up to the election in Northern Ireland, I think it was, I don't want to say the wrong news network, but it was one of the major networks. And we were amazed watching this video. Because, you know, you can't interview Alex Jones. Oh, we're not going to have Alex Jones on. But they did bring on a balaclava-wearing spokesman, apparently, for the IRA who said, no, we are absolutely going to threaten violence. We are absolutely going to commit acts of terror because it's an unlawful occupation. We don't care about Brexit. Fuck you. You know, like, it's like this is on TV over there. So don't you dare vote for the Conservatives. Otherwise, the IRA is going to start bombing people again, James. Unbelievable how thick they laid it on. But let's carry on.
Trump card, the NHS, was outweighed by Brexit.
Brexit.
The
Look at this. Look at
Conservatives
this.
have bulldozed Labour's traditional defences in the Midlands and the North.
Have
the
a
biggest
look
swing
at
to the
that.
Tories of 8.
I'll show you again. So that's what it was 2 years ago. Remember, only 2 years ago. And the electoral cycles over there are 5 years. This was a very early election.
And just to point this out again for the American audience, red means liberal in England. So those are the lefties when you see red, and it's blue for conservatives over there. It's completely backwards.
It's actually more complicated.
Yeah.
Like, I know you're right. You're just trying to make it simple, but I want to confuse our audience by saying red means liberal, but the liberals are on the blue side. Red is Labour.
Yeah.
So red is Labour.
Yes.
Liberal in the UK means like classical liberal, as it does here in Australia. Right? Like, I mean, the Conservative Party in Australia is called the Liberal Party.
Yeah, the liberals there are the libertarians here. It's very complicated. Just ignore the complications and just know that red is your enemy in England and blue is your friend. Okay?
Red bad, blue good. Got it.
That's right.
Got it, Professor. Got it, Professor James. Thank you.
Defences in the Midlands.
Look at that change, though. Can I just...
The
I have to show
Conservatives
again.
have bulldozed Labour's
That's what it was in 2017?
traditional defences.
That's what it is now. Have a look at that.
2 years.
Devastating.
Midlands and the North. The biggest swing to the Tories of 18% was in Bassetlaw, where the Conservatives...
The other thing that happens here too is, it's similar to what happened with Scott Morrison. It's a bit different because of the parliamentary system. Because of the nature of the victory by Boris Johnson, he can basically run the show how he wants now. because it would be political suicide for anybody in his own party to try and kick him out, right? If you win like this, you bring the whole party with you, because they are like, now Boris can do no wrong. Boris is obviously doing the right thing. We have to support him. Otherwise, I'll lose my job. Like, the voters will kick me out if I don't support Boris. After an election like this, he can decide the direction of the party, full stop.
Now keep in mind, the people here, the politicians here, watch this and are shitting in their pants, because there's always been a theme in politics that England is, quote unquote, like 10 years politically ahead of where America's going to follow roughly in 10 years. This is why we pay attention in the political arenas to what goes on in England, what goes on in Australia, because it tells you what the sea changes are in the political world. Okay. And so for this to happen, this has caused just tectonic shifts in everybody's ass in Washington, D.C., because they're seeing that literally, again, I can highlight that man on the street interview. The people are punishing politicians for not listening to the will of the people. And what have the Democrats here ran on for 2 fucking years? Oh, let's get rid of the fucking president. This impeachment nonsense, this is why the independents, they're going to punish the Democrats, just like what happened in England, because the people are not being listened to.
Conservatives won more than half the vote. Even Bolsover, Labour since the seat was created and represented by Dennis Skinner for half a century, turned blue. And Bishop Auckland, Labour for most of the last 100 years, gave a Conservative MP an 8,000 majority. Bolsover voted 70% to leave the EU.
Bolsover, the seat where that guy had led for 49 years, he'd sat in it for 49 years, in the Brexit vote, they voted for Brexit 7-3, 70%. Overwhelming support for Brexit, right?
One reason for the Labour loss, but another came up too.
I don't feel like Jeremy Corbyn would make a...
See, this is the other thing that the corporate media is now doing, James. For the last 3 years, they were happy to say Jeremy Corbyn's a great guy. Jeremy Corbyn's got great ideas. He's a tremendous leader. They need to now start redirecting it away from Brexit and start making it all about Jeremy. Now, Jeremy was a terrible leader and a terrible politician with some terrible ideas. That's all true. But now, after this result, where it's overwhelmingly obvious that the Brexit areas voted for Conservatives over Labour members because of Brexit, James, they called it the Brexit election, for fuck's sake. It was the Brexit election. So now they need to start redirecting it into, well, maybe not everybody's so convinced by Brexit. Maybe it was just Jeremy that's the problem. Do you see the slow sleight of hand that they're doing here to slowly drive that end of the conversation? Oh, it was more about Jeremy. You know, if we had a leader in there who was anti-Brexit but not Jeremy Corbyn, we would have won this. You're right? Do you see what's happening?
A good Prime Minister, just from some things he said in the past and his previous record on some things.
Don't like Corbyn.
Jeremy Corbyn keeps his Islington seat, but for how long his position as Labour leader? He called the election results very disappointing.
I will remain the MP for
Very disappointing, James. It was very disappointing.
Islington North, and I'm proud to represent the people of Islington North. And I'm proud in Parliament and outside.
Hold on, pause that. Look at the guy he was running against. He just got out of a rave. He's still got his fucking hat on. His eyes are still glassy from the fucking Molly. Look at this guy ran for a fucking seat in Parliament.
There's a lot of that stuff in the UK. In Boris Johnson's local seat, there was a guy dressed up as Elmo on the stage. My favourite one was about, I think about like 3 elections ago or 4 elections ago in the UK, where somebody had a party called No One. So when it went to so they go down the line in the results, right, when they announce the results, and all the people are standing there. They go down the line and announce the votes for each individual candidate. So it'd be like Jeremy Corbyn, 16,300 and such, Labour Party. John Smith, Conservatives, 4,000, and it would go down, and then they would say no one, 1,300, and the camera would zoom in on an empty space on the stage. There would be nobody there. Well, I just love the fact that people are literally voting for no one. I want an empty seat in Parliament. I want an empty seat that doesn't vote, doesn't say anything. The English know how to have a little fun. You know what I mean?
We will forever continue the cause for socialism, for social justice, and for a society based on the needs of all.
Are you hearing this? Listen again. The detachment from reality, James. He has just been annihilated in the election. So what's his plan for the future, James?
Islington North, and I'm proud to represent the people of Islington North, and I'm proud in Parliament and outside that we will forever continue the cause for socialism, for social justice.
Forever. Logic matters not to these people. Reality matters not to these people. Objective reality right in front of their eyes is just something to be pushed aside. Sure, I'm the leader, and as the leader, my party ran on socialism and social justice. And sure, my party was eviscerated, annihilated, and embarrassed on the world stage based on the fact that we ran on socialism and social justice. But that doesn't mean I'm going to stop doing it. That doesn't mean that it was a bad idea, does it? It was obviously a fucking great idea. It was such a good idea, the voters just don't know it. The voters are stupid. That's the problem. The voters are the problem, James.
Did you see that?
Can you believe it?
Where they said that it was labor for the better part of 100 years. 100 years! And they lost that seat. And this guy says he had great ideas. That's not what lost. What the fuck is wrong with you?
It's unbelievable, isn't it? But you see the same thing happen in the United States, right? The same dynamic applies, where they'll say, well, they'll do the same after impeachment. When the impeachment gets their asses handed to them at the next election, in the next election cycle, James, when all of the voters come out and say in the aftermath, well, it was really about the impeachment thing, I didn't agree with the impeachment, you'll see long-time Democrat counties go red because of impeachment. You'll see Democrat counties that they won in 2018 in the midterms flip back to the GOP because of the impeachment issue. And then you'll see a whole bunch of these people come out and say, well, I'm just going to keep pushing for impeachment. Because, that's what I believe in. That's what I think is right. I want to show you something. One more video here. Oh, sorry, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is why we keep saying I think they're going to engineer a no vote, is because of what you just said. They're already sending you that signal. You already have dipshit Al Green saying, we're just going to keep impeaching him. You have even Nancy Pelosi saying, we're just going to keep going. It doesn't matter if they vote it down in the Senate. We're going to do it again. You got the guy that said if Guam's going to tip over. Like, these people are all saying this same narrative. They're just going to not stop trying to impeach him. So what do they think the people are going to do? I'm telling you right now, the people are going to punish the Democrats royally in this next election for doing what the people don't want, going against the will of the people.
They already did punish them by electing Donald Trump in the first place. And this is I have a very hard time explaining this reality to longtime Democrat people. If everything was going so well, Donald Trump would not be there. If everything was going well in the UK, Brexit would not have happened. If everything was working the way you think it works, Boris Johnson does not win that election. All the available data and facts and objective reality points to you are wrong and your ideas are nowhere near as popular as you like to think they are. But instead of having that self-analyzing moment, instead of looking inward and saying and questioning your own program and questioning your own strategy, what do? No, they turn around and say, oh, no, it's a fear campaign. Oh, it's just because of racism. No, I'm right and everyone else is wrong. And it doesn't matter if they vote for me or not. It's probably because of racism in Russia and because he cheated. Because I'm obviously got the right ideas. I want to show you this guy. This guy, if you haven't heard of him, you should. His name's Mark Blythe. He's a Scotsman originally, but we won't hold that against him. He's now a professor at Brown University, which I believe is one of the Ivy League schools, is it not?
Yep.
Brown?
Yep.
Okay. He's a professor of political economics, James. Now, a lot of people would say, well, this guy, blah, 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 who cares? This guy accurately predicted both Brexit and the Trump election. Now, I would think that his personal politics, he's probably on the left, right? But I want to show you this guy because I think it's tremendously worthwhile. This was a video in 2016. I love his presentation because he doesn't do like a partisan cheerleading routine, right? He's not up here to push a partisan angle. He just says, this is the problem, right? Very cold and straight down line, even though he probably is on the left with his own personal politics. You save the cheerleading for us. We'll do that. So he doesn't cheerlead. So this is from 2016. Have a listen to what he says here 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago now, and see if this makes sense to you. Mark Blythe.
Well, here's the thing. My side is I'm very pro-European, but I'm against the euro. So if I still lived in the United Kingdom, I would have an interesting choice. So if you look at Larry Elliott in The Guardian, Larry has said that he thinks he should vote for exit because this might be the existential crisis that blows up the euro. Now, why would you want to blow up the euro? Because that will be terrible, etc., etc. Because the long-run effect of the euro is going to be to drive Western European wages down to Eastern European levels in global competition for export share with the Chinese. That's one interpretation as to where this all goes. And that's going to be fine for the Eastern Europeans coming up. It's going to be great for very efficient exporters in the north. It's going to be an absolute disaster for France and parts of Italy, if not all of Italy, and certainly for Greece. Now, if you have a system in which one side's running a surplus and the other side isn't allowed to run a deficit because of the rules, the only thing the other side can do is permanently contract their economies to allow someone else to make money selling BMWs. I don't see that ending well. So perhaps it's better to nip it in the bud when you've got the chance. Now, the thing is with Brexit, I don't think that's what the debate's all about. This is Trumpism. Everybody's got a version of it. Trumpism. You know Donald Trump? Yeah. Right, okay. So, well, here's what I mean by Trumpism. For the past 25 years, particularly the centre left, has told the bottom 60% of the income distribution in the country is the following story. Globalization's good for you. It's awesome. It's really great. And we're going to sign these trade agreements. Don't worry, there'll be compensation. It'll be fine. You'll all end up as computer programmers. It'll be fantastic, right? And by the way, we don't really care because we're all going to move to the middle because that's where the voters are, and they're the people with money, and they're the ones that we really care about. So you get this shift under Schroeder, you get the same thing under Blair to New Labour, whatever, and you make that move, and you basically take the bottom 30% of the income distribution and say, we don't care what happens to you. You're now something to be policed. You're now something to have your behaviours change. We're going to nudge you into better patterns, as the Americans like to say. It's a very paternal, it's very patronising relationship. This is no longer the warm embrace of social democracy.
I'm just going to rewind that back. The bottom 30% now becomes something to be policed, and we're going to nudge you into better behaviours. Cast your mind back to 2 weeks ago, Michael Bloomberg saying the reason we need high taxes is to protect people from themselves. Because when we have this is exactly the kind of shit he's talking about. Because when we have high taxes, if we don't have high taxes, the uneducated, fat, lazy, stupid people will buy more junk food and they'll die earlier. So raising taxes on them is actually a good thing for them. Like, they don't know it, but we're smarter than they are. See that kind of paternal, patronising way of politics that's been happening, like you said, mainly from the centre-left over the last 25 years.
Basically take the bottom 30% of the income distribution and say, we don't care what happens to you. You're now something to be policed. You're now something to have your behaviours change. We're going to nudge you into better patterns, as the Americans like to say. It's a very paternal, it's very patronising relationship. This is no longer the warm embrace of social democracy, arm in arm with solidarity with the working classes. They're there to be policed and excluded in their housing estates so that you feel safe in your neighbourhoods, so that you can have your private schools, they have their public schools, which you don't really want to pay taxes for anymore. So once this has evolved over 20 years, you have this revolt not just against Brexit. It's not about the EU. It's about the elites. It's about the 1%. It's about the fact that your parties that were meant to serve your interest have sold you down the river.
Yep.
Keep Le Pen,
yeah, they're all the same. Think how
this is when he touches on the Scottish National Party, James.
Ridiculous this is. Think of the Scottish independence thing, right? So these guys vote to stay in because the entire British establishment links arm in arm and says, don't do it. And you got to wonder why, because ultimately who's going to get hurt if they do it? People with money. So they're saying, don't do this, right? So, okay, they go, all right, then we won't do it, right? So then the SNP, the anti-austerity party, are in there like, well, we didn't win that, but, we're still in power, great, on you go. Okay, so what happens next? Well, if there's going to be a Brexit vote and to get out, then the Scots are going to vote to get back in. Okay, this is fun, right? So you're going to give up George Osborne, who's an austerity chancellor, for who? Dr. Schäuble. So your nice little Scottish welfare state's going to be really well protected by the tender embrace of the Germans. How's that working out for the Greeks? Right. People aren't thinking this thing through. This is basically a revolt against technocracy.
This is basically a revolt against technocracy.
It is a revolt against governance by unrepresented, unelected, undemocratic elites. And having had a government where every single district in your country says no chance, 61% say no chance, and then the result is we're going to do it anyway. You're basically proving to people that democracy is irrelevant. So this is global Trumpism.
And at the end, it's a no-win scenario. I mean,
well, it's a no-win
This is a great quote coming up here.
scenario until basically elites figure out that at the end of the day, as I like to say to my American hedge fund friends, the Hamptons is not a defensible position. The Hamptons are a very rich area on Long Island that lie on low-lying beaches. Very hard to defend a low-lying beach. Eventually, people will come for you.
Eventually, people will come for you. Eh? Isn't that good? Mark Blythe, ladies and gentlemen, professor at Brown University of Political Economics. Anything to add to that, James? Like, it's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, that's fucking brilliant. He hits the nail on the fucking head. This guy is a clear lefty. I mean, you can tell just by his manner of speech and the way that he's choosing to say things. You can tell where his personal politics lie, and he was pointing it out all along. That's exactly what. Remember, that's from 2016. So that, when he said, all came true. All of those things are exactly what's going on. It's exactly what we just saw with the new Brexit election. It's exactly what we saw with the election of Donald Trump. It's exactly what we're seeing happen worldwide. And I love the fact that he said, how's that working out for Greece? We've talked about these things all along of what the hell they sold. They look, the Germans fucking destroyed Greece the first time to create the European Union. That was part of the play. They deliberately tanked the Greek money. They put a run on their money. They put them into a really bad position. And the Greeks helped fuck themselves by wanting to have 2 months vacation every year too. But don't get me wrong. And I think it was something else. They wanted 6-hour work days.
Retirement age of 50.
Yeah. I mean, they were like, they went fucking batshit crazy. So they helped fuck themselves. But, again, it highlights exactly what we're talking about. It's exactly what you're seeing in evidence now. And this is why, again, 2020 is just going to kick them right square in the nuts because they're giving us no choice. And I love that. I love the fact that they've exposed themselves this much. And you can see the evidence right now in England. And you actually just saw the evidence in Australia but a few months ago with ScoMo. Don't forget that's another sea change election down there in Australia. It may not be as extremely relevant as how big Boris's election was, but all around the world, you're watching the people change direction and say, no, you've told us this shit for 60 fucking years, and it's clearly a lie because my entire life is fucked now because of you, and so we're not going to let you do it to our kids. It's time to change.
People are enjoying this guy. How about we play one more? I know we're running up on time here. We're getting a little late. We'll play one more clip of this guy and see what you think. He summarizes 30 years of Western capitalism. You'll like this.
So here's how I think about everything. So this is a book that's going to happen at some point. So this is how it goes. At the end of World War II, after the Great Depression, the rise of fascism, and a global catastrophe, one of the things that political elites learned in the West was you have to insulate labour markets. If you subject labour markets to simple price competition, and if you have open financial flows, you will destabilise those labour markets and you will cause a lot of volatility in those markets, which basically means labour gets annoyed. When labour gets annoyed and that coincides with large financial crises, you get into big depressions, and then the politics of that get very nasty. So learning from that, we decided we would insulate labour markets, and we did that in the United States with COLA contracts, cost of living adjustments. You did that in Germany with corporatist institutions. You had big labour on one side, big business on the other. Everything was negotiated. In a sense, it was a labour market cartel. Hold that concept in your head. So that cartel worked really well for a while. And at the same time, product markets were actually quite protected. We had a world in which we had countries that all made similar things and then traded them with each other. Whereas now under globalization, we have countries that do very, very different things and then trade very differently with each other.
Think of the Lima Declaration that we've spoken about so often on this program and others, James. We had to reduce our manufacturing capability in the West in order to allow third world countries to increase theirs so we could buy our own products back from them.
Yep.
That's what we're talking about here. And in exchange, we would trade things like finance and tourism and these kinds of things, right?
Through much more integrated labour markets and much more integrated financial flows. But before we get there, those product markets and labour markets, which were highly regulated, think the way that America used to do airlines. Right? Think about the fact that you couldn't open a bank account anywhere except in your home country. There were no derivatives. There were no global financial flows. That system produced a ton of inflation, and that's when it blew up in a crisis of inflation in the 1970s. In order to restore the value of capital, we underwent an experiment, which is variously called the Reagan and Thatcher revolutions, neoliberalism, whatever you want to call it. And once you unleash those forces, which are basically things you do, you integrate, you privatize, you liberalize, you marketize, you create a lot of openness in the system. And all of those protections, first in labour markets, either deliberately through policy, beating down on unions, or alternatively much later through things like market integration, which basically says to German workers, you're not really going to have a pay rise for 12 years because globalization for you starts 60 kilometres east of the Elbe. If you don't like it, we'll move the factory to, let's say, Romania. So there's a great deal of labour market discipline brought into it, and productivity breaks its link with wages. And we see this across the OECD beginning in the...
Think of at the end of Barack Obama's term in office, James, wages had been stagnant in the United States for around 20 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. 1970s, and this is the beginning of the big inequality skew. So to fill that in, what happens? We liberalise finance. And everyone borrows, whether it's governments or households or individuals, and we triple private credit in the United States and we double it in the European area.
National debt is at 20 trillion now. Unfunded liabilities, I think, are somewhere in the way of, is it about $500 trillion worldwide, James? Unfunded liabilities,
it's massive.
Which is things that governments have promised in the future but don't have the money for.
So we all live off of debt. Now, you can do that so long as interest rates are low and your incomes are growing, but your incomes aren't growing because you can no longer claim your share of productivity. So what happens is we start to get a massive skew in inequality with all those things going up to the top 1%, as we know. Now, in 2008...
During the Barack, sorry to keep interrupting, but I feel like I just need to put these caveats in. During the Barack Obama presidency, the gap between the top 3% and the top 90 and the bottom 97% grew more than all the other presidents combined.
That system had a heart attack, but rather than allowing it to crash and reset, we bailed it out with $17 trillion.
Oh, this is the other thing too that Democrats never like to talk about. The bailout of the big banks. Remember that big socialist guy, James? Remember that big socialist who hates capitalism? Who hates the big banks and stuff. He cares about the little guy. Instead of letting the system reset, what did he do? He took your money as a worker, as a blue-collar worker, as a middle-class worker. He took your money and gave it to billionaires in the finance sector.
Quality with all those things going up to the top 1%, as we know. Now, in 2008, that system had a heart attack, but rather than allowing it to crash and reset, we bailed it out with $17 trillion of public money through the central banks of the world. And what happened was another decade in which wages didn't grow, and more people got annoyed, and they were told they had to tighten their belts and do more with less, while the top 20% weighed off with even more of the gains. And at the end of that, something else happened. We started to notice that unless you're a digital monopolist like Google, your product markets were incredibly stressed too. Think about the price of computers. Think about the price of cars. From a consumer value point of view, it's amazing, but you think about the margins of most businesses, even if you've got globalized supply chains, they're incredibly tight. So businesses are getting squeezed, labor markets are getting squeezed. So the second cartel, the product market cartel, falls apart with globalization. And we try various things like the EU to basically create a region-wide cartel, but it doesn't really work. And then at the end of it, what's the last cartel standing? It was the political cartel that made all of that possible. The two-party system and multi-party democracies that guaranteed all of those institutions of the post-war compact. But all those institutions have been bypassed. They're irrelevant. They've been blown up. They've been integrated, marketized, privatized, globalized, both in product markets and in labor markets. So what exactly are they there to do? So they talk more and more, they tweet more and more, they govern less and less. They externalize to agencies such as the EU, the WTO, they push it up, they push it out. You have election after election where less and less seems to be decided. And eventually, when the system has a heart attack and has a 10-year cardiac arrest, and we're told that everything's fine because the top 10% and the top 1% are doing fabulously well, it turns out a lot of us don't believe that story anymore. And we start to defect from that cartel. And we start to go other places. And we don't like some of those places because they remind us of the 1930s. But the system itself is broken, and it's not going to be fixed anytime soon.
There you go. Isn't that tremendous? I think that guy has a brilliant mind, and the way he just succinctly boils everything down in just a few minutes. Mark Blythe, look him up on YouTube. There's a whole bunch of long lectures and whatnot. Yeah, it's a 10-year cardiac arrest, James, and then a whole bunch of people decided that the system isn't working for them anymore. That's how you get Brexit. That's how you get Donald Trump, basically. And it's pretty straightforward, pretty obvious. Just before the hammering, James, I want to show you this. Army Navy officials investigate possible white power gestures by students. Yes, this is what we're talking about in the Washington Post. We're not talking about globalization. We're not talking about private equity. We're not talking about debt. We're not talking about the 1%. We're not talking about political backlash happening around the world against the elites and the political cartels, which is a crumbling system because it's been bypassed by globalization. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about guys at a football game doing funny things with their hands. Oh, dun, dun, dun. Officials at the Army and Navy academies are investigating whether hand signs flashed by students standing behind a reporter during a TV interview were intended to convey a message of white supremacy. What happened to the good old Roman salute, James? Remember when those were the days when you could pick a Nazi quite easily because it looked like they were trying to shield their eyes from the sun? You know, what happened to that? Couldn't we go back to that? Wasn't that much easier? The incident involved 2 West Point cadets and 1 Naval Academy midshipman who were behind ESPN's Rhys Davis as he reported on the sideline before the annual rivalry game Saturday in Philadelphia. Who won that game, by the way? I don't know.
Navy won.
Navy. Good job. Good job, you Navy boys. Well done. West Point is looking into the matter. Lieutenant Colonel Chris Ofart told the Post in an email, "At this time, we do not know the intent of the cadets. The gesture, which is open to interpretation, James," this is in the Washington Post, because they decide it's open to interpretation. If you don't know the history of this white power thing, let me fill you in. The reason that there are a bunch of people right now running around saying that this is a white power symbol is because it literally started as a thread on 4chan, and the guys were saying, let's convince the mainstream media that this means white power.
And they did it. The guys on 4chan are fucking still laughing every time they see shit like this. Like, I can't believe that these fucking guys fell for this shit. Like,
they memed it into reality.
They did.
They memed it into reality. And the best part is, these people now admit that it started on 4chan, but they say because white supremacists are using it, it's now a white supremacist symbol, even though it started on 4chan as a joke to make us look like idiots. Like, it's again, like, look at the themes of tonight, right? Electoral wipeout in the UK. Oh no, everybody loves socialism. Everybody loves our policies. I mean, a meme started on 4chan. Let's turn this into a symbol of white supremacy. Hey, I know it's a symbol of white supremacy, but it really is a symbol of white supremacy. I know it's a joke, but it really is. Like, they can never admit. Like, look at last week when Kamala Harris stepped out of the Democratic National the nomination, James. Yep. They were saying Kamala Harris is vital to this race because she represents diversity. She represents a changing America. She drops out. The top 4 candidates are all white people. Cory Booker goes on TV and says, no, Americans really do care a lot about diversity. I'm angry that they got rid of Kamala Harris. Like, well, when are you going to let this go? Clearly, they don't care as much about diversity as you think they do. Jeremy Corbyn, clearly the people in the United Kingdom don't care as much about socialism and social justice as you think they do, right? WAPO, clearly people don't care so much about white power symbols as you think they do, but they never assess. They never change. The gesture, which is open to interpretation. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, look, everybody knows, look at the white hair, okay? I've been around for a while, okay? We used to play the circle game when I was a kid. We would do all kinds of things. The last person to fucking put up the signal had to pay for the pizza. The last person to put up the signal, they had to ride in the back of the pickup truck. I mean, whatever it was, we did this when I was a kid. This shit's been going on for decades. And this is just kids playing the circle game. But because of the climate we live in, now it must be white power.
Absolutely. It resembles the common one used to indicate okay, but with the hand pointing downward. In September, it was moved from a trolling gesture to a hate symbol by the Anti-Defamation League, James. They've decided it's a hate symbol. They decide what reality is. And if I could just go back to an earlier point, they also decide what's anti-Semitic on the internet. Yeah. Sign that executive order, Mr. Trump, which maintains a database of hate symbols. In doing so, the ADL was careful to note on its website that the gesture has multiple messages, James. The reason I want to bring up this article is the comments section at the Washington Post. I would never normally do this because I don't want to light up, people who are just writing comments on websites, but this is too good to pass up. You are going to fucking love some of these people. California Billy says, what's the issue? The racist commander-in-chief attended the game and will excuse any effort by officials to discipline these military youngsters. He even wore his little red hat for the occasion. And he can educate the boys and girls at each academy about how to escape military service by having bone spurs on my aching footies. Gets better. Racist idiots are everywhere. If they choose that kind of behavior, they need to experience the harshest of consequences. What, death penalty? Should we do that? Hang them. The firing squad, James.
We need to come up with how we can use the internet to make all of the lefties do this. Like, just walk around. This is right there.
Look at this guy. One shining light of common sense makes its way in, and of course, as you would expect, he gets jumped on by the other people in the comment section. This kind of stupidity, this stupid, gullible journalism and credulous idiocy by the left is why Donald Trump is president. It's not a friggin' white power symbol, you insular morons. The next question is, Jim Jordan, is that you? For some reason, you didn't note that Trump attended the game and the scum spoke to both teams in their locker rooms. If you don't think the appearance of the racist in chief had a liberating effect on these people, you're delusional. It's unbelievable, isn't it? These men are there to become officers, to be leaders of men as senior officers. How can you entrust them with your lives of enlisted recruits who come from all types of diversity, gender, and orientation? If they confess, they have to go. Just one more confirmation that Russian.
If they confess to what? What the fuck are these people talking about?
They should be locked down in a room and beaten until they confess, Joe. Quick solution. Expel them from the academy and send them to their respective services for a 3-year enlistment starting at the rank of E1. And the next person says, this is a bad idea. Why? Do you want more racists in the ranks? Despicable, unacceptable, reaching up to touch deplorable, more gaslighting to claim this is a game, and where did Cadet Coke Can grow up? Disgusted army vet. If Kaepernick can take the knee, then the white fans in the stands should be able to use their gesture. And then this person says, you totally missed it all. Kaepernick took a knee to highlight racism like this. Really? That's it? He took a knee to highlight this? To highlight this here.
I'm telling you right now.
These people are mad.
These people are insane. The grandparents of these people are rolling over in their graves going, look, we should have never had kids, okay? We just should have never had kids because what the fuck are these people talking about?
Oh, wait till you hear this comment. This is the best one. We'll leave it at this one. The FBI better start doing its job on infiltrating and busting these evil jerks before they get out of control. One wonders what has been taking them so long. They're obviously full of homegrown terrorists, James. If they can't be squished, what the hell good is the FBI?
The FBI for fucking the circle game.
Yeah, because the circle game proves that they're homegrown terrorists. in the fucking military academy. In the academy where they're training officers, they are recruiting homegrown terrorists, and we know this because a few of them did this. Unhinged. Completely and utterly unhinged.
I'm telling you right now, everybody, start the meme. This is for liberals. It means that they're ultra intelligent. Just start doing this. That's for liberals, right? And then we'll get all of the fucking liberals to start doing this all over the place. We'll just laugh at our fucking asses.
Okay. Well, James, tonight's theme for the hammering is the road to redemption. So I hope I hope you're ready to confess your sins, you white supremacists, as this lovely young lady did on CNN earlier in the week. Let's go.
Stop the hammering.
Former Breitbart editor calls Stephen Miller a white supremacist, James. Let's go. Because this is obviously calling everybody a racist, calling everybody a white supremacist, calling everybody a Nazi is obviously a winning strategy in 2019. Isn't it? We saw it in the UK. We saw it in 2016. This is the path to victory, calling everyone a Nazi. Let's go.
White supremacist. This is what a former...
Dun, dun, dun. Do you remember when these words, just incidentally off the top of my head, James, do you remember when these words actually carried a little bit of meaning? Do you remember back then?
Yes.
When to actually, like, I'll let you in on a little secret here. I have actually known in my life legitimate Nazis. Like, not the kind of Nazis that goes to West Point and puts this symbol up at a game while they're wearing their military uniform for the United States. No, the kind of Nazi who would hate all branches of the military because they killed the Germans in World War II. The kind of Nazis who who hate Donald Trump because he sucks up to Israel. Like these are the kind of Nazis I'm talking about, right? Yep. They like the boot wearing fucking army fatigue shaved head guys. I've known them in my life.
I'll tell you the biggest reason that those kinds of people still hate Donald Trump is because he let his daughter marry a Jew. No bullshit. That's fucking people that are racist motherfuckers right there.
Yeah. Like, they hate Donald Trump, they hate Milo Yiannopoulos, they hate them all, right? But now they use this term, white supremacist, and they throw it around so much. I mean, fuck, they call Dr. Carson a white supremacist, for Christ's sake.
I know.
Right? Like, I would, if I were a legitimate Nazi, I'm not, because I've also known hardcore communists in my time as well. For some reason, I seem to attract the fringes of society when it comes to conversation. But putting that to one side, if I were a hardcore Nazi, I'd be really upset. I'd be like, hey, he's not a white supremacist. I am. I'm a white supremacist. Stop using our term. That's our word. Come on. You don't even know what it means. Now somebody's going to clip that. Boogie Bumper says, I'm a white supremacist. Maybe I'll get in salon now. Maybe Chris won't be able to hold that over on me.
Breitbart news editor is calling Trump senior policy advisor Stephen Miller. It's a stunning thing to say. She knows him. I mean, how does she know he's a white supremacist? Well, you need to see this special report.
I'm pretty sure Stephen Miller is Jewish,
You need to
by the
see
way.
this report, James. You need to see why Stephen Miller is a racist for the 500th time. Now we have irrefutable proof.
You're all white nationalists. Former Breitbart news editor Katie McHugh says she is doing her first television interview for one reason. She wants to expose a
Wait till you see this chick.
white supremacist in the White House. You think Stephen Miller is a white nationalist?
A white supremacist, I would say.
A white supremacist, I would say. Not a white nationalist.
Wide-eyed chick. Oh my God! Look, I just for the record, I'm pretty sure, like I'm like 98% sure Stephen Miller is a Jew. Just to put that out there. So
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean he had family killed, but I digress.
Remember this article?
Yeah, exactly.
Is Donald Trump a supporter of Israel? Sure, he's also an anti-Semite. You can be both. You can be a Jewish Jew hater, James. It's fine.
Yep.
What am I doing here?
Because I believe his ideology is one of domination and control over people of color.
Stephen Miller is a senior aide to President Donald Trump. He did not respond to a
This story gets really juicy, though, James, because
request for comment.
We're going to find out that she was let go from Breitbart for racist tweets. Okay. But that doesn't come until like right at the end of the clip. First, you need to learn about why Stephen Miller is such a bad guy before we find out why she's a piece of shit herself. You know what I mean?
A White House spokesperson has said that Miller is not a racist and is being attacked because he's Jewish. McHugh says that's laughable. She says on his rise to the White House while working for Senator Jeff Sessions,
are you ready to send Donald J. Trump to the White House?
And later on Trump's campaign, Miller was in constant contact.
See how they show that footage specifically? Are you ready to send Donald Trump to the White House? That's not an accident, right? We're directly tying white supremacy to the election of Donald Trump now.
Yeah, I was confused why they showed that, because I thought what the language she used right before that was like to show him saying something racist, and he literally just said to him, "Are you ready to vote for Donald Trump?" I guess that's racist now.
Of course it's racist, James. Anybody who supports Donald Trump is a racist. We know this. We know these facts, James. Come on now.
With her, pushing stories that fit an anti-immigration narrative.
An anti-immigration narrative, James. White supremacy. So let's have a look. Indian migrants arrested during smuggling attempt near Canadian border. Wow. It's basically Mein Kampf. Watch the anti-migrant video going viral across Europe. Wow. Did he say gas the Jews? No, he didn't. He said watch the anti-migrant video going viral. Pew Researcher, rate of illegal immigrant males in workforce 12% higher than US-born males. Oh my God! What a white supremacist! These are the best examples. These are the best ones that they had. This is the best that they could dig up. Open Borders rap sheet, 30 crimes by immigrant suspects in September alone. What? The guy's basically Adolf Hitler over here.
Stories she wrote for Breitbart without question.
Were you a white nationalist? I think I would call myself that. Whenever...
What?
Were you a white nationalist? I think I would call myself that. If you have to think, then you probably were.
If you want to call it white nationalist, white supremacist, that's fine.
That's what you...
If you want to call it white nationalist, white supremacist, that's fine. Do you remember at the start of the interview when she said, is Stephen Miller a white nationalist? She said, I would say white supremacist.
Yeah.
I would say because it's about ideology of domination. Are you a white nationalist? Well, you can call it white nationalist, white supremacist, whatever. Doesn't really matter.
Yes, but that part is dead.
That part of me is dead, James. That's in the past now. I'm no longer a white supremacist. I'm coming on here on CNN. I'm throwing myself at the mercy of the progressive court, James. I used to be a white supremacist, and now I'm not. I lost white supremacy in 60 days. Ask me how.
I think this was
Dale Carnegie,
political to let his star rise because he could manipulate you? Or do you think he actually is a white supremacist?
I believe he wanted access to power because he is a white supremacist.
White supremacists?
And wanted to impose those policies. Those emails are, you can read his own words.
McHugh says these are some of his own words.
Okay, I'm trying to read them, but they're very small. They like to just flash these examples up and then not really point to them.
Right.
What do vandals say to the people fighting and dying overseas in uniform right now who are carrying on a 7th or 8th generation of military service in their families, stretching back to our founding? Wow, white supremacy.
Jesus.
White supremacy, if you ask me. These people are fucking unhinged. Unhinged. Again, this is the best shit they've got. This is the best they've got, guys. This is the best. Look at the UK. Look at what happened in Australia. Look at what happened in 2016. It's not getting better for these people. It is getting objectively worse. People often ask, like, where do you get, like, your information from? I'm like, I get it from the same place you get it. I just see it differently. Yep. I just read it differently. I don't just take it all in and tattoo it on my brain like it's gospel truth. I absorb it and then, use a bit of discernment and try to see what they're saying when they're not saying things and try to see what they're saying when they're saying other things, right? It's really not that hard. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
In emails to her, she saved 900 or so exchanges between Miller and Breitbart staffers from 2015.
So why have we only got 4 on the screen?
2015 to 2016. In 2015, not long after...
Look at what they're doing here!
Yeah. And I would argue, this is, by the way, this is fucking footage of the guy that killed all the black people in the church, just so you know. I don't want to even say his name, but that's who that is. That's what's going on here. And they said they had 900 emails, so they would have put the most damaging one front and center. So what you saw was the most they could come up with was some ridiculous bullshit. And now they're going to tie a video of the mentally disturbed person who went in and shot up a black church and tie it to Stephen Miller. This is sickening what these people are doing.
Wait till you see how they tie it to him. They tie it to him because he didn't directly talk about it. So they're saying because he didn't talk about it, therefore, it proves that he's in support of it. These people are mad.
Slaughtered 9 black Americans praying inside their Charleston church. McHugh says Miller called and emailed not with sympathy for the victims, but instead a focus on changing the narrative to outrage over the removal of Confederate statues and retailers removing Confederate merchandise.
The story has to be what everybody else says it is, right? That's what the story. So because he wanted to talk about the removal of Confederate statues and the removal of Confederate merchandise online, no. This proves that he supports the guy who shot up the black church in South Carolina.
Right? Look, everybody knows this is insane. Everybody knows I'm Asian. Everybody knows my girlfriend is Asian. I'm going to get her a Confederate bikini, and we're going to get a Confederate flag, and I'm going to put it behind me instead of the fucking green screen. That's how fucking unhinged these people are.
One of my favorite bands growing up, James, you probably know them because you're into a bit of the heavier stuff. Have you ever heard of Stuck Mojo?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, they were one of my favorite bands growing up. A lot of their songs about like growing up in the South and stuff, coming up from the South. They put Confederate flags on shit. The singer's black. The singer's black.
Have you thought about going to Amazon and finding the commie flag and then doing a story on that? Yes, definitely, she replies. This is the story McHugh wrote. Did he?
This is all evidence that he is a white supremacist, ladies and gentlemen.
I mean,
this is evidence of white supremacy.
I wish we had time to play it, so I'm just going to recommend it. That guy Jonathan Pye we played earlier. There's an interview with him on YouTube with Channel 4 News. It's out of England, so just look up Jonathan Pye Channel 4. And in that interview, he talks about how satire and how the free speech. How the fuck did we, the left, remember he's a lefty, how the fuck did we, the left, allow the right to become the free speech people? Like, what happened to us that we gave it all away? That we just start making up this ridiculous shit like we're watching right now? Like, this is so insane that the people can't even come up with satire. They can't even figure out that the guy's like, what the fuck are you thinking? Like, people just don't get it.
Ever once mentioned that he was sorry that 9 African Americans were slaughtered while praying at church?
Never. No, it never occurred to him.
Never.
Yeah, you know why it didn't occur to him to apologize for people being slayed in church? Because he didn't shoot them, you dumb bitch! Is that obvious enough? Shouldn't you, James, as an Asian, shouldn't you apologize for the way that Japanese people keep panties in vending machines in Tokyo? Don't you think you should apologize for that? Come on. What's wrong with you?
I forgot to apologize for Vietnamese people eating cats. I'm sorry. I forgot.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Oh, there's a lot of crimes. There's a lot of crimes we can throw on your shoulders, mate.
But McHugh says immigration was his favorite subject.
Favorite subject. I love immigration. See, even the words they use, like from one sentence to the next, this is all programming. See, if I was doing an honest report here, I would say something along the lines of immigration was the subject he focused on the most, or immigration was immigration was the pressing issue that he saw immigration as the pressing issue of the day. But no, they have to infantilize it. Oh, immigration was his favorite issue, right? Because he just loved talking about it because he's a white supremacist, not because everybody else in the fucking world is talking about immigration, right? Not because the whole election of Donald Trump was basically 3 things, like bring the jobs back, immigration, and more money in the pocket for working people, right? That's pretty much it.
Right.
No, it wasn't because of that. It's because he's a Nazi. Right. Gotcha.
In 2015, he also sent McHugh an email, subject line, "For your Islam story." In it, a link to the conspiracy website InfoWars.
Oh, which, by the way, has been proven that all the shit that they said that the CNN people were doing, they were doing. Like, all the stuff they said about the Pfizer report, yeah, it's all true. Like, literally, there's CNN stories. This is the best. The conspiracy website InfoWars. Remember, this is one of Alex Jones's most famous rants. They're turning the frogs gay! You remember? That was just conspiracy conjecture. CNN has articles now, right now, this year, about how the fertilizers have been basically desexing the fucking frogs, amphibians. So just think about that. This is just extrapolation is what he did. This is performance. It's like when I do fucking pirate radio and I say fuck every other word, okay? It's what he's doing to make points, to bring out the points. They literally just called InfoWars a conspiracy theory website, but all of his shit keeps coming true, and all of CNN shit is proven to be a conspiracy.
But I did a clip on my show a couple of weeks ago, James, about the cameras and the microphones in the smart TVs. And on mainstream news in Australia, they literally say that these smart TVs can be hacked. People can watch you in your own home. And the way to solve this is to put tape over the camera on mainstream news.
I know.
But, Alex is a conspiracy theorist.
He said it 30 years ago. He said
exactly.
30 fucking years ago.
Now, the beautiful part about this is what I love as well. They say the conspiracy website InfoWars, look at what the headline, it's a direct quote from somebody.
Yeah.
So what, did the quote not happen? Is the quote false? What's your point here? Because I love when I send a link to somebody and it'll be from like a Zero Hedge or something like that, and I'll say, I don't trust that source. And I'm like, don't worry if you trust the source or not. There's a direct quote in the fucking story. Like, you can trust the direct quote from the words of the person I'm trying to draw your attention to, can't you? Like, no, everything's wrong. Everything's false.
The headline, Reverend Graham, we are under attack. Stop all immigration of Muslims to the U.S.
Now they're parroting right-wing talking points on CNN, James. Beautiful.
A few months later,
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete
Wait a minute. Time out.
A few months later, Donald Trump said the same thing. Oh my God.
But they stopped at the fucking headline. Like, literally, she's trying to write a fucking story, right? This is supposed to be a journalist. Stephen Miller draws her attention to a story. What does CNN report? A fucking headline that's a quote of somebody else, but it doesn't explain anything else. Remember, ... those are missing words, and there's all of the thoughts that lead up to the quote. So none of that is talked about. It's like, what?
And these are the same people who will criticize people like you for just reading headlines.
Exactly.
Right? But we got to tie it to Donald Trump. A few months later...
of Muslims entering the United States.
In another email exchange...
Doesn't he look like a badass there, Stephen Miller? He usually looks like a nerd. He looks like a hitman there.
Miller suggests coverage of immigration and the Pope. You see the Pope saying we must in effect get rid of borders? Someone should point out the parallels to Camp of the Saints.
Vile, disgusting racist novel.
The Camp of the Saints is a book beloved by white supremacists.
Do you see why this is fucking magic? Stephen Miller is they are so dumb. Stephen Miller is saying, look at what the Pope is saying, and then draw a comparison to this disgusting racist novel. Right? This awful white supremacist novel. Look at the links between what the Pope is saying and what it says in the Camp of the Saints. They come out and say, Camp of the Saints is beloved by white supremacists. And it's like, yes, but wasn't he saying that what the Pope was saying was drawing parallels to Camp of the Saints? These fucking people are mad.
A Breitbart editor published the content Miller suggested.
There you go.
This election is a referendum.
And just before Miller heads off to work for the Trump campaign in 2016, He touts what he saw as the danger of allowing hurricane victims from Mexico to come to the U.S. They will all get TPS. That's temporary protection status. That needs to be the weekend's big story. TPS is everything.
See, you're not allowed to report on news anymore. You're not allowed to put news out there anymore. If you say that people are going to come in and all get temporary protection status and temporary protection status is wrong, that's a policy argument, right? That's a policy debate. Right. Like, is this something we should do? No. That's white supremacy now, James. That's white nationalism.
He says, and sends McHugh an article on the dangers of TPS from a prominent white nationalist website.
I got to look up this website, by the way. Thank you for putting it on the screen, CNN. Thank you.
You to parrot a white nationalist website?
Yes, he did. It was understood that Miller had editorial control over the political section of Breitbart News.
Okay. Well after Miller joined Trump's inner circle, the U.S. ended TPS status for several countries.
Obviously, because he's a white supremacist, James.
McHugh is ashamed of her role.
She's ashamed. This is where it gets good. This is the juicy part. I love this chick.
In all of this, she was fired by Breitbart for an Islamophobic tweet, among other things. The website said, including for being a liar.
That's it.
She was fired for being a liar, but we're going to give her a cover story.
You have to see this report, this special report on white supremacy, James. You absolutely must see it.
In 2015, you said, another crusade would do a lot of good. Let's turn Mecca into a strip mall. Another tweet, the only way to strike a balance.
She's spicy, this girl. Or at least she used to be before that part of her died.
Between vigilance, discrimination, and terror is to end Muslim migration.
That's a quote from Miller. That's a paraphrase of a conversation that we...
He made me say it, James!
But listen to how she uses the language here. She said it's a quote from Miller. It's a paraphrase. Wait a minute. A quote is the direct words. A paraphrase is what you thought they meant. Big difference.
She's putting out her own tweets like as herself, right? She's not saying from Stephen Miller.
Right.
She's saying like, this is my opinion, this is my view. But now she's got the fucking audacity to get here on CNN and say, no, but that's what Stephen said. Stephen said that. That was a quote from him. I was just a young, impressionable girl working at Breitbart. I didn't know I was a white supremacist. Stephen Miller filled my head with all of this racism. He made me think horrible things. Like, this is what we're fucking dealing with here. By the way, yes, she was fired from Breitbart for what? For being a liar.
Another tweet, the only way to strike a balance between vigilance, discrimination, and terror is to end Muslim migration.
That's a quote from Miller. That's a paraphrase of a conversation that we had.
This was the tweet that ended up you getting fired over. There would be no deadly terror attacks in the UK if Muslims did not live there. Did you believe all these hateful, racist, Islamophobic things that you were putting out there on your Twitter?
Racist, hateful, Islamophobic things. Did you believe them? Look at that face. Did you believe them, James, when you were tweeting them?
I did.
Why should people believe you're sincere?
Because I believe in publicly confessing your sins.
Publicly confessing your sins?
She's trying to get a job I think she's trying to get a job at the New York Times. That's why she's doing this.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. She's trying to get a job anywhere, I would say. Anywhere. I believe in publicly confessing your sins. I was once a white supremacist, but now I have seen the light, James. You know, those tweets that I put out saying edgy, spicy, racisty things, why, that wasn't really me. That was Stephen Miller channeling through me. Like, I didn't even, he has this much power. I believe his favorite topic was immigration, you know. That's his favorite topic. That's all he wanted to talk about. All he wanted to talk about.
I think she tried to sleep with Stephen Miller and he turned her down. That's what I think.
Well, as long as he wasn't eating glue, James, then I guess we could be happy. Remember that story that came out a while ago? Do you remember that? I think it was Huffington Post. We spoke to Stephen Miller's third grade teacher who said he used to eat glue. It's a true fucking story that came out. Everyone was like, what the hell is wrong with you people? Anyway, you can be cured of your white supremacy, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I hope you learned something here tonight. Don't take it from me. Take it to the person who was literally fired for lying. That's your hammering.
Stop the hammering.
Folks, that's almost all the time we got for you. Boogie's going to open the chest over there on D-Live. Everybody was yelling, open the chest, about an hour ago. We're like, well, wait a minute. Let us get to the chest first. So he's opening the chest right now. We're going to get the rewards passed out. You might actually get paid to watch this show. Until next time, if you want to follow him, you can follow him at Boogie Bumper. If you want to follow me, you can follow me at Real Person PLTCS. If you want to follow us, you can follow us at TAB Show. And you can find all of our prior episodes soon to be over there on D-Live at TAB Show.
Yes, follow both of us at Real Person PLTCS and at Boogie Bumper on D-Live. DLive.tv/Boogie Bumper, DLive.tv/Real Person PLTCS. And the chest has been opened. Native CA, Adboa, Joanne, Sebastian, and Jenny Schick take home the bickies, James.
The what? The bickies?
The bickies.
What the hell are the bickies?
The biscuits. You got to take home a tin of biscuits.
Oh, I see this fucking cross language. The biscuits. Got you. All right, guys. We'll see you guys next week. Aloha.
Look, it's hard being a Democrat. You got to make tough decisions like, do I vote for a socialist who'll destroy the economy, or do I vote for a socialist who's totally insane and who'll destroy the economy? Well, for the rest of us, here's an easy one. Donald Trump. It's a fact. In Trump's America, more people are getting a paycheck than ever before. 6 million new jobs in 3 years. That's one new job every 12 seconds, 250 an hour, and $3 billion in value every day. No wonder the guy's filling stadiums. Trump ain't raising the bar, he is the bar. It's payday. Keep America great. Stand with Trump in 2020.